Chapter 132. Ding. Congratulations to the host for building a new class advancement facility. Avalanche Defender class advancement unlocked, Aurora Knight class advancement unlocked, Eternal Wind Knight class advancement unlocked. Host, please toss a commoner into the facility. After 2 minutes, a powerful warrior will jump out. Do you think I would say that? Stop dreaming. This is the real world. There is no such thing as a messy class change system that is neither scientific nor magical. You want a powerful warrior? Fine, I'll train and nurture them myself. You want to send troops just by building a barracks? The interstellar war next door is calling for you. Alright then, as expected, it wouldn't be so easy to have a powerful troop type. However, the system that was neither scientific nor magical actually retorted that I was unscientific. As expected, it was just as annoying as always. This was already the 3rd day of the Day of Return celebration. However, not only did Defender's celebrations not stop, the celebrations had already expanded to include the entire country. Since that's the case, we might as well hold a nationwide celebration and pardon the world. Food will be provided by the national treasury. Let the people who have been oppressed for a long time enjoy themselves. This was the judgment that I had made. Although it was obvious that I was trying to win over the hearts of the people, in this time of storm, it was indeed effective in calming the hearts of the people. The celebration was nothing more than food, wine, music, artistic performances, and all kinds of special activities. The square outside the window was filled with endless singing and dancing, and the sound of drums and music shook the heavens. But inside the palace, it had already returned to the busy daily routine. According to your plan, the Day of Homecoming celebration will last for 5 days, and the food for the celebration will be provided to the other towns. This will use up at least 2 months of rations, and the food supply that we've worked so hard to obtain will have a shortfall in advance. Although there were some kind-hearted people who sponsored them this time, and they earned quite a lot, the expected lack of resources was still a hidden danger. If it wasn't you, I would have stopped the proposal at all costs, and then found a reason to throw the proposer to the border as a coolie. The words of Kelly, the head female official of the royal palace, echoed the common thoughts of the government officials. They, who are used to living a hard life, could not help but wish that they could split a single copper coin and spend it on 2 separate days. How could they tolerate such extravagance and waste? If it wasn't for me suppressing them, I'm afraid that this celebration wouldn't even have been held. Everyone has worked hard, but it's worth it. On one hand, it was to reward the people. Although the harvest season was still dismal, it was not their fault. After a year of hard work, it was time for them to rest for a few days. On the other hand, we have to give the people a new impression that from today onwards, everything will be different. With this as a node, a lot of work will become easier in the future. Morale, popularity, the will of the people. This seemingly illusory thing will, in a sense, play a crucial and positive role. At the very least, it will fill the stomachs of the people and give them hope for a better future. This is the only thing we can do now. Of course, to truly change this country, he had to do it step by step. I made a whimsical request to the system, and as expected, I received an answer that was even more whimsical than I expected. Every single warrior required several years or even more than a dozen years of training. You want to send out soldiers just by throwing resources into a barracks? It would be great if this could be done in real life. Then, the 2 most important things right now are still those 2. One is the rebuilding of the main army, and the second is the problem of food. Even though the sparrow was small, it had all the essentials. There were at least 30 officials present for this emergency internal affairs meeting, and from what I had just interacted with, there were quite a few talents among them. The reason why Renee and the Mist royalty were able to last till today was due to these experienced and hard-working administrative talents. A filial son can be seen from a poor family, and a country's difficulties can only reveal a virtuous minister. Should I be thankful for all these years of training? To be able to organize a celebration in a short 10 hours, calculate how much pressure a week's celebration would have on the next year's food supply, and then arrange a new base for the army. That bunch of people in Sulphur Mountain City who always said what Lord Saint said is right definitely wouldn't be able to do it. But no matter how skilled an administrative talent is, it still comes from the efficient use of resources. Even the cleverest housewife can't cook without rice. Without anything, even the most skilled administrative talent can't do anything. At this moment, I am not used to the way the meeting is conducted. As a newcomer, not only do I not have an official position, I am even sitting at the main seat to host the internal affairs meeting. Yet, they are acting as though it is only right and proper. The one who is the most uncomfortable in the meeting is me. After all, I am already used to the bunch of unreliable subordinates. In the past, I spent most of the time in the meetings struggling with them, trying my best to bring the topic back to the original point. Now that I am discussing problems with the members of the meeting so seriously, I am actually not used to it. Looking at the serious faces of the group of middle-aged and elderly officials, constantly taking notes, pondering, and asking questions, I really want to pull Shueti, who is still reveling in the square, over and let them see how others work seriously. As for food, there should be a batch of meat in half a month's time. If we prepare our reserves, it should be able to prolong the consumption for a period of time. Kelly immediately comes to a realization. You are talking about that whale? I nod my head. That mountainous narwhal carcass is too much of a waste to be left in the sea. Considering the food supply, I have already sent the Borealis to drag it back. Considering that it is really too big, if it is impossible to drag it back, it is possible to cut it into pieces on the spot and bring it back. Even if a top-tier sea monster is dead, the remaining might will last for a period of time, so there is no need to worry about fishes and prawns finding us so quickly. The whale meat can be used as food, and there seems to be top-tier spices in its body. This is a huge fortune, and it would be a pity to waste it. As for solving the problem of food from the root, I have a plan. Selling off the harvest this time should not be a problem to exchange for at least 2 to 3 years of disaster relief rations. Then, we can take our time to think about it. After all, Donglan is a small country. The huge amount of resources that even the Emperor of the Ottoman Empire, a mega country, would be an astronomical figure to a small country. It is possible for them to eat for a few years. After asking, the head of the finance department flips through his records and nods his head affirmatively. If we were to sell off those gems and minerals, not to mention 2 years, even 5 years would be enough. I nod my head in satisfaction. At the same time, I think of Dasos's bitter face when I extorted him. Also, I heard from Rosemary that she has already entered the core of the Ottoman Empire. Perhaps, there will be opportunities for me to play some tricks in the future. From a maid with a suspicious identity to the upper echelons of power, she even said that she might be able to step into an even higher position. I really wonder how she did it. Although she is still unwilling to tell me the reason why she ascended to the top in a single step, I don't think that she would lie. Other than the fact that her phylactery is still in my hands, the top-tier intelligence on the entire continent that I obtained from her also proves that she has indeed come into contact with the upper echelons of power. It is obviously impossible to just rely on eating from the rich, but at the very least, it should be fine for a few years. I will think of a way to solve the problem of food. Now then, let's talk about the proposal expanding the army. If it were any other country, the proposal to expand the army would be a life-threatening proposal. The Dove faction and the Hawk faction would definitely fight it out. Unless the Emperor exerts pressure on them, it would be a dream to not drag on for 3 to 5 years, or even 10 to 20 years. Strengthening the central army would also have to consider the reactions of the local domain lords. Even if it is passed by a fluke, when the time comes to start building the army, it would be difficult to snatch military positions and authority. But for Donglan, who has struggled in the northern lands for so long, this is practically a dream. The main reason why they didn't expand the army previously was because they couldn't afford to support it. Regardless of whether it is to deal with future wars or to protect the citizens from the winter beast stampede, in the northern lands, there is no amount of powerful armies. So, the first thing I have to do is to imitate the mist country structure of the past. With my knights as the core, I will rebuild the various armies. Their original names, flags, and equipment will all be the same. If I have the help of the veterans, I should be able to take shape within 10 years. Looking around, I saw everyone nodding their heads in agreement and excitement in their eyes. The people of the Mist Country had already suffered enough from a lack of military strength. As long as the resources keep up, they would be able to build a truly powerful army. This was a dream come true. Actually, the will of the youngsters to protect their country has always been strong. The number of people who volunteered to join the army has always exceeded the capacity of our logistics. Now, as long as the logistics can keep up, coupled with the fact that we have legendary tier troops to attract new recruits, there shouldn't be a problem with the supply of soldiers. Then the recruitment will begin after this celebration ends. If you don't have sufficient equipment, then use the simple wooden sword and wooden spear for training. Let's set up the venue first before we talk about anything else. Start from actual combat and focus on training. However, there were some who understood the hidden meaning behind my words and raised their doubts. Future wars. Does Your Highness think that there will be another war? All of you should have heard that a new eternal sacred war is about to begin. On the Ottoman side, the war between the water elementals and the seafolk is just the vanguard. That isn't the only place that isn't peaceful. At the mention of the eternal sacred war, everyone's face darkened. Expanding the army was one thing, but fighting a war was another. It had only been a few days of peace. Why did it have to come again? Not long ago, I received confidential intelligence that the black-winged people in the south and the wind elemental god are working together. Their cloud fleet is currently heading west, looting all the cities and towns that pass by. There were even 2 capitals of intermediate kingdoms that suffered a calamity. As for the north, at the mention of the north, as expected, everyone's spirits were lifted. After all, this was the northern end of the human world. Their lives were at stake here, so no matter what, they had to be extra careful. I sighed helplessly in my heart. As expected, the people of the mist were plagued with disasters. A year ago, they had just defeated the Beastman tribes, and after a few days of peace, trouble came again. In the north, there seems to be a tribe that has received the support of the earth elemental god and has suddenly become stronger. That fellow has proclaimed himself as the Khan of the beast men. They should be swallowing each other through internal strife. Going by tradition, it is only a matter of time before the main army invades the south. That is impossible. Your Highness, I am not saying that you are lying, but this is a devastating disaster. Your Highness, are you sure about your source of information? Your Highness, which Beastman tribe is it? Is it the Highland Beastmen or the Plains Beastmen? Have the other northern countries received the news? As expected, the moment this heavy bomb was dropped, the entire conference room became noisy. The Beastmen of the north were divided into 2 regions. The Highland Beastmen were distributed along the Orizon mountain range. The terrain there was complicated, and more than 70% of the Beastmen lived there. On the other hand, the Hulan Plains had a smaller number of Beastmen, but they were densely packed, so the threat they posed was greater. If it was the Beastmen tribes from the Highlands, there would at least be a few countries acting as a barrier. However, if it was the Plains Beastmen, there was a border between Donglan and them. Due to historical reasons, that border of several dozen kilometers had never been peaceful. Of course, this was still considered good. If it was the border of the Mist Country in the past, the 2 sides would be directly connected to each other, and the pressure would be even greater. In the past 200 years, the Highland Kingdom of Suya, which had the bloodline of the barbarians, rose to power. Together with the neighboring Rhodes Kingdom, they forcefully split the Beastmen Plains into 2, thus alleviating the pressure. By the way, these 2 countries were the only 2 among the 7 northern countries that had a good relationship with the Donglan Principality. Other than the fact that they were viewed as barbarian countries, their territories were newly developed lands of other races, and they didn't occupy the original territory of the Mist Country. Thus, they didn't have this complicated history with each other, which was the main reason why they had a good relationship with each other. As for the other countries of the 7 northern countries, most of them were lords who came from the south, and they might even be relatives of the 17 countries that were destroyed. How could they have a good relationship with each other? At the very least, unless it was absolutely necessary, merchants wouldn't be willing to come to this barbarian country. There are 3 countries in the north where the natives of the northern lands are the main inhabitants. There is also an ancient country called Phoenix Nest. The Rhodes Kingdom is located on both sides of the border, and its political stance is slightly leaning towards the north, But its royal family is from the south, the 4 countries in the south, among them, the Sluware Kingdom is a product of the Mist Kingdom split, and they emphasize that they are the true ruler of the Mist Kingdom, and a bunch of small autonomous regions that can't even be considered as countries. This is the chaotic situation in the northern lands. The entire Northlands were viewed as barbarians by the major human countries, and there were endless conflicts between the various countries in the Northlands, which made this bitter and cold land truly a land of exiles and borders for humans. At the very least, many of the so-called autonomous lands were free lands formed by bandits and wanted criminals. This information was actually provided by the Kingdom of the Elves, so it should be reliable. It's said that they've already informed most of the human kingdoms. It's the Highland Beast Men, I think it's called the Bloodaxe tribe. P2E, those long-eared people can't wait for us to fight to the death with the barbarians, but we're still being ostracized. Ha, Sluware is going to be out of luck. Serves that bastard traitor right. It's the same for the Kosomi Duchy, the Bloodaxe tribe doesn't seem to be far from them. But I'm afraid that the Rhodes Kingdom will be implicated. There was a lot of discussion, and at this point, it was time for the meeting to come to a final conclusion. Don't be too happy yet. Although we won't be the first to bear the brunt, the possibility of being implicated is not low. Once the border is breached, we will still have to face the Beastmen tribe, so we need to prepare for a real battle. Therefore, I have a suggestion. This year, we will restart the glory of our past, the winter hunt. The meeting room was still bustling with activity, but I was resting at the side of the corridor. Even though it was already night time, the square not far away was still noisy. The bonfire had already been lit, and the vulgar yet lively music made me smile from the bottom of my heart. I also saw the bone dragon that was twisting its waist and dancing in a strange manner. It seemed like they were planning to cause a ruckus through the night. All the tasks that could be assigned had already been assigned, so I didn't have to worry about the rest. The preparations for the recruitment of soldiers and the homecoming day celebration were going smoothly. I didn't have to worry too much about it, and the only point of contention was still the winter hunt that I had proposed last. Only the people of the northern lands knew that the beasts in winter and the beasts in summer were 2 completely different concepts. The beasts that were driven crazy by hunger were bloodthirsty and fearless of any enemies. If they were to go crazy from hunger, they could just dig a ditch to protect the city, and they would use their flesh and blood to fill it up. The mutated beasts and super beasts in the snowy mountains were not uncommon. Once they went berserk, they would definitely be extremely terrifying enemies. Spring and autumn in the northern lands were extremely short. Spring, summer, and autumn only added up to 5 months. After 30 days, the northern lands would be covered in snow and ice, and the winter season would descend once again. In previous years, in order to deal with the beast hordes, fortifying the walls and clearing the fields would be the best solution. If the beast hordes formed a beast tide, it would be a helpless move to move the residents of the small villages and towns to the big cities. After all, not everything could be brought along. When the villagers returned to their hometown in spring, they would definitely see their homes in ruins. On the other hand, large migrations were often extremely dangerous. If they happened to meet a beast hordes that had set off ahead of time in the wild, ferocious beasts that set off on their own would probably be delivering themselves to their doorstep. However, it was even more unrealistic for the villagers to give up their homes, livestock, and farmlands right from the start. If they were to give up once a year, they wouldn't be able to survive. Furthermore, the living space around the big cities was limited, and the food supply was even more limited. Obviously, the above countermeasures were both passive and problematic. On the other hand, the winter hunt that I suggested, not only would we be able to obtain a large amount of meat and beast specialties, we would also be able to use our mobile forces to fight against the beast hordes. At the same time, we would be able to reduce the pressure on the cities and boost the morale of the citizens and the army. There were many benefits to it. Of course, everyone knew of these benefits, but the reason why they hadn't implemented it all this while was because of the fundamental problem of strength. Using fortifications in the cities to deal with the beast hordes that could only fight a war of attrition, and using them to deal with the bloodthirsty and cunning beast hordes in the wild, were 2 completely different concepts. The reason why my suggestion was rejected by everyone was due to their lack of understanding and confidence in the military strength of the country. How can we be considered a strong army without going through the trials of battle? No matter what, the frenzied beast men would be easier to deal with than the brainless beast hordes. Even if we are worried about those young lads, the new soldiers would be able to grow swiftly with the guidance of the veterans. An army that has never seen blood, no matter how well equipped they are, can only be considered as security guards. I didn't argue with them. After all, words were useless. In the end, it would still depend on strength to convince them. In any case, the army was already in my hands, so I should just prepare for it. Right, my current identity was rather awkward. After all, I was the prince of the Mist Country. Even though the royal family of this country claimed to be my descendant and had received the recognition of the world, from a legal perspective, I should be considered as a member of the royal family. However, logically speaking, I should be considered as an emperor who had already retired from the throne. However, I had never been an emperor, and I wasn't dead either. How did I become an emperor just like that? This relationship was so messed up that even the most formidable heraldry expert, the study of noble bloodlines and family emblems, wouldn't be able to sort out this mess. As for the military power that I currently held, it was under the identity of Princess Renee's guardian knight. That's right, guardian knight and not a knight of military merit. After all, not too long ago, in order to use the Roland sacred sword to prove my identity, I could only ask Renee to help me confer the title of knight in name only. In the end, she conferred me the title of guardian knight right at the city gates of Defender. We're about to enter the city, so how can we have the time to look for the Senate to confirm your noble title and territory? In any case, there are many precedents of older brothers and fathers serving as the guardian knight of a single princess. Big brother Roland is just like my big brother, so you can just make do with the title of guardian knight. As she said this, Renee's face flushed red. It was apparent that she was a little embarrassed. However, the identity of guardian knight was indeed very convenient. Using the identity of Renee's representative to deal with matters, it also avoided a lot of awkwardness. At that time, I felt that this was a good idea and even praised Renee a few words. Her adaptability isn't bad, and this lass is quite quick-witted. That's more like my descendant. Even though I was praising her from the bottom of my heart, for some reason, the moment I said these words, Kelly and Renee's faces darkened. There were even people from the undead army behind us who laughed out loud. Alright, back to the main topic. At the very least, this identity of Renee's representative gave me, who didn't have an official position, some confidence when I called for an administrative meeting. In reality, there were many things that weren't convenient to talk about during the meeting, but I had already begun to deal with them. Since the symbol of royal authority, the Roland sacred sword has reappeared in the world, Donglan should be able to discuss the legitimacy and merger of the Mist Country with the other smaller countries. There's also the Frigid Moor altar in the middle of the snowy mountains. Who knows how many new Frigid Moor have been born over the past 300 years. It's about time for a true Aurora Knight to be born. These two matters can only be accomplished by me personally. Troublesome matters came one after another. At this moment, I missed Eliza immensely. With her around, I could be at ease and leave all the work to her. Why don't I find some time to chat with her? System notice: your death-seeking has broken through the heavens. Cough, this time, I really didn't come out to criticize you for courting death. Instead, I have another daily quest, please accept it. Ding. Daily quest: today's unlucky fellow, please punish at least 3 villains who have committed evil deeds. Depending on the identity of the person being punished, you will be rewarded with 1 to 100 fate points. There is no upper limit. However, if you fail, 1000 fate points will be deducted. You don't need to do daily quests just because you have so many fate points recently that you aren't afraid of deducting it. If you still fail this daily quest, 10,000 fate points will be deducted the next time. Looking at this daily quest, I was momentarily stunned. Doing evil doesn't necessarily mean that it's illegal. If it's illegal, it's more likely that it's evil. In the past, it would be easy to find any villains to punish. I just have to find a criminal in the prison. However, due to the Homecoming Day celebration, the amnesty order was just passed down. Where am I supposed to find a criminal? If I were to directly go and find a criminal right now, the gods' notice in the sinless land would seem to be right beside my ears. Even the most deranged villains would fear the might of the gods and restrain themselves for a period of time. Looks like I can only admit that I'm unlucky. The darned system must be pissed at me and wants to mess with me. 1,000 fate points it is, but I really need to be careful of the 10,000 fate points tomorrow. Fart. The scene in front of me caused me to spit out my tea. I rubbed my eyes and wondered if I was hallucinating. It was a group of men running. Among them, there were quite a few familiar figures. The one leading them was that tall and mighty Minotaur. Returning to nature and walking with the wind, this is the true nature of us Minotaurs. My real name isn't important. Please call me the Son of Wind. Come, my friends, please join us in this beautiful run of riding the wind. As I expected, there were quite a few guards chasing behind this group of bastards. Other than wooden sticks, they were also brandishing messy clothes and pants. Lord, at least wear your underwear. Underwear, underwear. The shouts of the city guards echoed in the streets. My face immediately turned green. Son of Wind, your head. Is it because this is the underground world? How many Minotaurs are there in the entire Defender? Isn't it obvious from the start? The Supreme Judge is leading the team to run naked. How are the judges of the Church of Law going to conduct themselves tomorrow? I thought that you would be able to hold it in for a few days. You can't take it anymore? My family is unlucky. Thus, I picked up the Silver Avenger without hesitation. I get it now. So the system isn't pissed at me, but at that stupid Minotaur. Fine, I'll clean up my family today. Ding. You guessed it right, but there's no reward. The system continued to prompt. Think about it, why does the quest require at least 3 people? Yes, due to the miracle of the Sinless City, those local criminals will have to restrain themselves for a period of time. However, have you forgotten that there is still a group of weirdos who are experts in guessing the boundaries of the law? Do you want to become the fireworks expert that everyone envies? Do you want to comprehend the profound meaning of the underground world's sacrificial rites? Safe, reliable, and dazzling. The safety brand fireworks are on sale. You deserve it. Alright, the villains who sold dangerous goods and fake goods have appeared. TMPH, it's time for us to settle our grudges. I want to avenge my lover number 38. Leaning against the wall with a bow in hand, a Draken hunter with the demeanor of an expert stands tall. Ha, don't think that I will be afraid of you just because you advanced to legend. A true hunter will never fear the strength of their prey. That will only make us happier. Your weakness has long been exposed to me. The next moment will be the day of your death. This is an old dwarf hunter. Although he looks ordinary, the silver gleaming hunting rifle in his hand is obviously not an ordinary weapon. At a stall on the side, a gnome is shouting with all his might. The grudges from 30 years ago have been settled in a single night. A peerless battle is about to begin. Kabbalah Gambling House is currently accepting all kinds of bets. If you bet that the legend Draken will win, the payout is 1, 2. If you bet that the Ace Archer will win, the payout is 1, 3. If you bet that both sides will perish together, the payout is 110. If you bet that both sides will settle the grudges with a smile, the payout is 100. Alright then, there were gambling scams and private brawls. Hearing all this, I knew what I had to do. Before the underground world and the Church of Law's reputation were thrown into the gutter by these bastards, I had to hurry up and clean up the mess. Can I bet that due to some special reason, the duel has been stopped? Of course you can. The payout is 7. However, the ending of the grudges with a smile isn't included. The moment the gleeful Kabbalah raises his head and sees me, his smiling face turns into a crying face. Aren't you supposed to be in a meeting? Instead, I throw a bag of gold coins at his head. Keep it well. After I settle this bunch of bastards, I will ask you for your reward. Alright. What followed after was a delightful night of suppression. After running until I was out of breath, I immediately placed rebuilding the town security as the most important task at hand. In the end, not only did I complete the daily mission on time, I even accumulated more than 700 points. Of course, the nude running of the highest bishop is destined to be a stain on the Church of Law. However, in the future history, this is how this dark history will be recorded. AD 1897, during the homecoming celebration, due to his heartfelt joy for the knight who returned home, the highest bishop, Shueti, drank too much during the celebration. After that, he lost his virtue. Although he didn't violate any laws, in order to punish himself, he hung himself on the highest flagpole in the palace for 3 days and 3 nights. The people of the world sighed at his noble virtue of upholding justice and being strict with himself. They named him as the just hanged man. Hanging him on the flagpole became the path of cultivation for every judge when they were at a loss. In order to commemorate this legendary story, the homecoming sun breeze became a traditional custom. Of course, most of the participants would still wear underwear. Chapter 133. AD 1897, the Summer of the Griffin. Facing the worsening situation of the country, in order to deal with the impending Eternal Holy War, the Night Princesses Rane, Qin Mist of the Donglan Principality made up her mind to retrieve the lost glory of the Mist Country. She worked hard and went through many trials before finally obtaining the recognition of her ancestor, the Valkyrie Roland Mist. Following the return of the undead army, marked by the homecoming celebration and the first winter hunting season in 300 years, history turned over a new page and the Northern Wolf King who ruled over the North finally rose once more. This is a review from a certain historical journal many years later. Looking at it from here, it seems rather normal. Of course, to the majority of the audience, this isn't the main point from the very start. Princess Rane, who remained unmarried for her entire life, actually allowed her ancestor, Roland, to become the guardian knight. This is the hot topic of countless poems and dramas in the future. Although there aren't any detailed historical records left behind, considering the chaotic family relationships of the Northlanders and the fact that Princess Rane remained unmarried for her entire life, we can guess that there is some truth to this creation. As for the rumor that Princess Rane's sexual orientation is a little strange, it should just be a cover to deceive the public. The above is an excerpt from exploring the historical archetypes of the 10 great classical love operas, compiled by a publishing house under the cultural department of the Ainlok Empire. Note: this book is viewed as a forbidden book by the Donglan Empire and the other northern countries. The author was once hunted down by the people of Donglan. If he were to bring this book into the northern lands and get ganged up on, he would be asking for it. The publishing house isn't responsible for it. Alright, I won't pursue the matter of this publishing house that courted death to the extreme in the future. I won't even consider the trouble that this guardian knight would cause in the future either. At the very least, for the time being, he has resolved the awkward problem of my character's position and prevented the strange situation of having 2 cores in Donglan. After all, the Eastland Principality was currently rebuilding its various armies, and all the army commanders were undead knight. From an outsider's point of view, it was as if I had descended from the sky and taken control of a new army. Naturally, it would feel like I was just a figurehead, so it was best to avoid certain things. Most of the army divisions were formed very smoothly. Just as they revealed their intentions to expand the army, the Ministry of War and the recruitment points were filled to the brim. Although due to the backwardness of the industry, there was no need to think about weapons and equipment, at least there were enough people, and training could begin. Naturally, there were also those who were unlucky. Some armies met with trouble right from the start, and it was a huge problem that could not be solved in a short period of time. Asmu Houndmaster? There's a full set of training methods, and it's even an improved version. The people who signed up are all smart kids that were carefully selected, and they're all good seedlings. Those undead rangers also showed off their dog training skills, and the dozen or so skeleton dogs surrounded and ambushed them, giving them the taste of a battlefield, but the problem is, the tuck fighting dog is extinct. How is that possible? Alright, I really didn't expect this problem. The tuck fighting dog is a large fighting dog unique to the northern lands. They are at least half the height of a human, and their snow-white fur is extremely resistant to the cold. They have sharp teeth and a keen sense of smell, and they are naturally aggressive and loyal. They are the best companions of the Asmu Houndmaster, and after training, they even dare to fight with lions. Only then did we realize that the destruction of the country back then was too great of a loss, and all of the domesticated fighting dogs were lost. After that, there were consecutive natural disasters, and even humans couldn't eat their fill, let alone the dogs. Those that didn't run into the mountains to become wild dogs were basically eaten up by the refugees. At the very least, there isn't a single fighting dog left in Defender. After hesitating for a moment, I finally asked, since the fighting dogs are extinct, why don't we try changing into an Asmu Houndmaster? The northern lands might not have much, but there are definitely plenty of wolves. It seems that the winter wolves are quite strong as well. They seem to be of the canine family, so there shouldn't be much of a difference. Alright, the moment these words came out of my mouth, the undead rangers looked at me as though I was an alien. Your Highness, wolves and dogs are fundamentally different species, and the wild nature of wolves is hard to tame. Furthermore, winter wolves are magic beasts, so no matter how you look at it, they are completely different from ordinary wolves. My lips moved a little, but I didn't say anything. Should I go and talk to them about Darwin's theory of evolution? Furthermore, who knows how the dogs and wolves in the other world evolved? They might really be a different species, and it would be even more embarrassing if I were to get it wrong. Crossing species is indeed a difficult problem, but, speaking of this, when I mentioned crossing species, I suddenly thought of a certain person. The reason why you still like humans is because you haven't met a life that you truly love. Species. That has never been a problem. The elder brother of a certain true love brother and sister duo. Thus, I tried to bring up this topic. Even if it sounds inconceivable, we can still give it a try. You guys should go and look for the hunter named Bayfong. Heralt. He is the legendary human who prisoner Bayfong, crime Bayfong, judgment Bayfong. No, don't look at me like that. I haven't given up on my treatment, and I didn't take any medicine today either. Trust me, you guys should go and look for him first to give it a try. The rangers left doubtfully. I was secretly glad that I managed to fool them, and I forgot about the matter. I didn't expect that after 2 months, the rangers would rush into my office and tell me a piece of shocking good news. What? That fellow actually succeeded in taming a winter wolf. Heralt Polar Wolf Tamer. What does this name count for? Right, how did he succeed? Why is everyone silent? Alright, I know that I shouldn't ask, but please don't tell me, and don't spread it out. If the Heralt Polar Wolf Tamer could be considered to have found a replacement by chance, there were a few armies that, due to various reasons, were unable to be formed. Due to the existence of the Dragon Knight Tymea, the living signboard of the Black Griffin Aerial Squadron, the registration for this meritorious squadron was very enthusiastic. However, the registration was closed after a day, and Tymea didn't accept a single person. The reason? Without powerful aerial mounts, how could an aerial squadron be formed? From the name of the Black Griffin Aerial Squadron, it can be seen that the Mist Kingdom's aerial cavalry was no different from the other human empires in the past. They still relied on griffins as their main force. However, the current Donglan couldn't afford to rear expensive griffins. Furthermore, with the outbreak of the Holy War, it was clear that it was difficult to purchase such military supplies. Seeing that his brothers had already formed an army while he was still a lone commander, how could Tymea not be anxious? The suggestion to transfer the Aurora Knight and the high-tier Headless Knight into the aerial squadron is rejected. Tymea, don't look so bitter. I will get Bustion to capture a bunch of manticores and send them over. They are much stronger than griffins. What? That's 2 different matters. Manticores are impossible to tame. Believe me, you might need a Bayfong. What? Group tactics can only be used in a group of griffins? Alright, if you insist on griffins, I remember that Little Red is rearing a flock of them. It is possible to borrow a few dozen of them. However, if it is 100 of them, even if she is willing to give them to us, we won't be able to afford it. Just like how the energy consumption of a mechanical flying unit is 100 times that of a chariot, in order to break free from the shackles of gravity, a large amount of energy must be expended. In the end, flying units are generally huge energy consumers. This is the case for machines, magic creatures, and even living birds of prey. The humans' griffins and giant eagles are considered good, but they still require a large amount of meat for every meal. A meal of 400 to 500 griffins is roughly enough to feed 10,000 people. Even the head of finance and logistics would faint if he were to do so. However, if the griffins aren't in a flock, they wouldn't be of much use. Alright, at most 30 of them. They can only be used as scouts. We really can't afford to rear any more of them. So be it. At least it is better than a lone commander. After Tymir sighed and left, a new problem came. This time, the ones who came were Fandurk and Lonnie. They were once outstanding users of holy light. After being converted into undead creatures, the two of them became outstanding Death Knight. However, the army that they formed met with an even bigger problem. Originally, their Dawnhammer army was a holy light army with holy knight and battle priests as the core. However, not to mention Donglan's dissatisfaction with the Holy Church, this would definitely slow down the progress of the recruitment process. Furthermore, the fact that the leader and vice leader were unable to use holy light was the biggest problem. A Death Knight who was unable to use holy light was teaching holy light and holy knight battle techniques. This was a completely embarrassing situation. Furthermore, if an undead were to stay among a large group of holy light users, it was possible that they would be purified by the holy light for no reason one day. This was something that they had to guard against. Why don't we try forming a Black Warrior or Black Knight army? Or perhaps we should form a Death Knight army and teach those kids the battle techniques of Death Knight in advance. In the end, the fallen Holy Knight army and Death Knight army fell through. After all, the requirements for a job were too ridiculous. There was not a single living knight who would take the initiative to change into a Death Knight. As for the Eternal Wind Knight army, Slants, who was in the midst of forming a Light Knight army, the content of our discussion could be roughly described with 11 words. Money. Horses. Equipment. No money. No horses. No equipment. A knight was a money-burning job and a knight army was even more so. How strong the logistics of a country was in order to support a strong knight army. Hearing my reply, the cool Slants turned around and left. Perhaps, he knew from the start that he wouldn't be able to get it. However, how could he be satisfied if he didn't try? Initially, I thought that it would be easy to recruit soldiers to form a new army. However, when I really sat in this position, a myriad of miscellaneous matters came crashing down on me. Only then did I realize that I was too naive. I could still think of ways to overcome the flaws in the front, but there were some areas where I was at a dead end. Among them, the most difficult one was that Donglan's industrial standards were lagging behind this era. This lag was in all aspects. Smithing, iron, mining, engineering, alchemy, all of them were still at the level of 100 to 200 years ago. Even if there were wise rulers who tried to work hard in this area, putting aside the hostility and blockade of the mainstream human society, even if others were willing to sell, Donglan wouldn't be able to afford it. The old smithing furnaces were still the models from 2 centuries ago. All of the alchemy and engineering shops were selling low-end standardized products. After losing the last rich mining area 20 years ago, the mining industry declined rapidly. Now, it was as if there was nothing left. In this world, if one wanted to forge a good sword, they would first need a miner to gather a sufficient amount of iron ore. Then, the iron ore would be processed into steel ingots and iron ingots before being handed over to a blacksmith to forge. If one came across a high-quality sword, they would even hire an enchanter or alchemist to carve magic runes and enchant them. With Donglan's current industrial standards, not to mention analyzing the new weapons obtained from the Ottoman Empire, it would be difficult for them to even repair the damaged equipment in the armory, not to mention providing the new army with quality equipment. Even a low-quality iron sword required countless processes, not to mention the superior equipment of the Ace Knight Order. Donglan fell into a strange situation where they had blueprints but no craftsmen, technology but no equipment, templates but no raw materials. This was the difference between them. Fortunately, I had dug up quite a number of talents from the Ottoman Empire. There were talents from all walks of life, but to let them live and work in peace and to truly assimilate into the bloodline of this country, it would require a large amount of time. Currently, what we lacked the most was time. Boom. Boom. From afar, the sound of an explosion reverberates through the clouds. The the roof beams that were sent flying across the sky, spiraling into the distance. However, the citizens were already used to it. After all, such explosions were a daily routine. Previously, the citizens couldn't understand why I had designated a separate area for the specialists of various professions to do their research. However, after seeing the daily explosions here and there, they finally understood my painstaking efforts back then. But this time, after the explosion, they saw a familiar figure. It was the miracle alchemist Olivia, whose entire body was emitting smoke. At this moment, even though she was in a sorry state, her face was filled with excitement. Ever since she became Ingo's apprentice, the number of explosions that Olivia made up half of the entire research area. Every day, she would do it at least 3 times, sometimes even 10 times. Even so, she didn't die from it. Perhaps, this is the origin of the name Miracle. While I was criticizing her in my heart, Olivia smiled happily when she saw me. Your Highness, I have made some progress in the research that you wanted me to do. Just as you said, it might be able to change this world. Chapter 134. Magical Engineering, a new theory that is destined to change the structure of the entire world in the future, is still in its infancy. It isn't a brand new theory that suddenly popped up. Instead, it is a combination of scientific theories based on engineering and forging materials, as well as magical theories based on magic formation and alchemy. It only started to shine in the middle of the Holy War. 2 of its creators were poached by me from the very start. Putting aside Timlad, who is still doing his homework in a public elementary school, Olivia, who is learning from the great alchemist Ingo Bayar, is improving rapidly. The goblin had boasted about accepting a genius disciple many times in private. At the same time, he complained that his disciple's inventions are too unreliable and that he was cheated many times. Thus, as her sponsor, I unhesitatingly gave her the research topic that I had planned. Without a doubt, this is cheating in a certain sense. I invited the original inventor over, threw the original research topic to her, and even provided her with research conditions that far exceed what she had in the past. If she still doesn't succeed, then there is nothing I can do about it. Of course, they aren't as mature as in history, so I have sufficient patience to wait and reap the fruits of my labor. But now, Olivia actually told me that there is progress in her research. Naturally, I am overjoyed. Your Highness Roland, everyone is still trying to decipher and analyze the other subjects. However, the portable energy battery that you gave me happens to be within the field of magic formation and alchemy that I specialize in. With the help of my teacher and everyone else, I have already made some progress. I am overjoyed. This portable energy battery happens to be the research target that I have been looking forward to the most. If I can overcome this obstacle, the progress of my research in the future will be greatly accelerated. In the history, there isn't a single new technology that has a greater impact than magical engineering. In the end, it is because this technology was originally prepared for the weak humans, and humans are undoubtedly the main force of the Order faction. The idea behind its design is that since humans need to train for at least a few years before they can obtain supernatural powers, and many magical beasts are born with natural talents and magic, why not just add an external power source and use a mechanical shell to imitate the abilities of those magical beasts, saving the time needed for humans to train and accumulate power. The warrior as the operator, the magic engine as the energy source, the weapon peripherals and the outer shell of the armor as the output. The 3 of them worked together to form a perfect cycle. Without a doubt, the magic engine that used the portable energy source as its core was the core of this design concept. When this cycle was formed, the goal was to allow ordinary humans to use supernatural abilities. Even in the later stages of the game, the magical mechanical dragon that was able to wrestle with true dragons was just an extension of this design concept. It was just that the magical engine was powerful, and the mechanical outer shell was also extremely powerful. However, there was no fundamental change or subversion in the design concept. The outer shell of the mech wasn't a problem from the very start. Sulphur Mountain City's engineering was the best in the world, and Roland No. 2's mech was already very powerful. However, the Titan's Heart wasn't a product that could be mass-produced. The other Roland series required an astronomical number of cores and energy sources, which was why it couldn't be mass-produced. It was said that the magic machinery was powered by the body of the living, and it could even be quickly charged by a mage. In that case, as long as there was enough energy, it could be used repeatedly, and the returns from a one-time investment would be limitless. This was the reason why it could be mass-produced. Of course, making heavy machinery was definitely a foolish and strenuous move. My ambition wasn't that unrealistic. The Ottoman White Wolf Guard relied on their explosive javelins and indestructible exploding swords to become a silver rank warrior. This was enough to prove that a pseudo-magic weapon could overturn the fighting style of an ordinary warrior and raise their fighting prowess to a frenzied level. Even though I had a large batch of White Wolf Guard equipment in my hands, analyzing it wasn't something that could be done in a short period of time. I reckoned that even if I were to analyze the secrets behind it, it would still be difficult to mass-produce such top-notch equipment, which involved the structure of alloys and high-level enchantments. The biggest possibility was that we wouldn't be able to afford the raw materials and the industrial technology wasn't up to standard, thus making it a Dragonslayer's technology. However, if every single one of my warriors were to have a magic sword that didn't have many requirements to use, just the most basic elemental enchantment and cannons would be able to completely change the positioning of a warrior on the battlefield. This was a shortcut to raising one's basic fighting prowess. Thus, from the very start, the core of the problem was the rechargeable magic engine, which was also my primary goal to tackle. One of the core technologies of this magic engine was a portable energy battery that could be rechargeable. Now that Olivia told me that she had successfully tackled the problem, how could I not be overjoyed? Initially, I thought that it would take me 3 years to tackle the problem. However, it has only been 3 months since the Ottoman era, and I have already gotten results. No matter how I look at it, I can't believe it. Perhaps it was because my gaze was too intense that she felt embarrassed under my gaze. Olivia lowered her head and muttered, "Lord, I didn't come up with it alone. Teacher Bayar, Ingo, and Lord Kakana helped me a lot. Or rather, it should be said that it was done by our group." Tyrant Plague Lich Kakana? I was stunned for a moment before coming to a realization. Kakana was originally an ace alchemist among the commoners. It was said that her goal back then was to become an alchemy merchant who sells beauty products and nutrition products. The more tenacious one's will is, the more resentful a soul is, the easier it is to turn into an undead. Even though she didn't manage to fulfill her long-cherished wish, she was still unwilling to reveal what her long-cherished wish was. She responded to my call and became a member of the newly born Red Hunting Hounds. Alchemist and saint are occupations that rely on accumulating knowledge. They are famous for their slow advancement. Time and experience are the greatest bottlenecks for their growth. Initially, Kakana, who wasn't adept at fighting, was just a little sister whom everyone carefully protected. However, towards the end, she became one of the most fearsome existences in the army. Alchemist is a job where the more knowledge one has, the stronger they become. The longer they live, the more fearsome they become. As long as they have enough time, there are no dangerous experiments that they can't do, no strange ideas that they can't try, no poisons that they can't concoct. After 300 years of accumulation, the potions that she concocted are ones that the living wouldn't dare to drink, even the undead wouldn't dare to drink. She grew from a skeleton mage to a lich. As for how strong she is now, I don't know. After all, I didn't have the chance to let her go all out. Liches are existences that are at least legend rank. Her title of Tyrant Plague also shows how the world views her. The number of lives that have died in the plagues that she created is uncountable. Furthermore, she has 3 apprentices and one of them is a lich. To the human kingdoms that treat gold rank alchemists as national treasures, an alchemist of legend rank and above is a rare treasure. 2 legend rank and 2 gold rank alchemists to form a research team is an unparalleled treasure. It is because they are too capable and the direction of their research is the most lethal poison, plague, etc. That's why I have been suppressing them, not giving them the chance to display their talents. Otherwise, if they were to really create a few destructive super plagues, even the gods would gather together to deal with us. The explosion alchemist Ingo. Bayar of Goblin Alchemy, the miracle alchemist Olivia of Human Alchemy, the tyrant plague Kakana of Undead Alchemy and her research team. Unintentionally or unintentionally, The alchemy research department in Donglan has gathered a top-notch research team that could put even a superpower to shame. No, the reason why we could succeed this time is due to luck. It is all thanks to Olivia's ingenious ideas. A faint green soul fire burned fiercely within the skeleton. Underneath the white robe were dried bones filled with mana. Just the existence of this skeleton would strike fear into the hearts of the living. If it weren't for the slightly high-pitched mana-synthesized voice, no one would have thought that this was actually a female. However, from the looks of it, she seems to be a little unused to the doctor's coat. As she walks, she would subconsciously tug at the fabric of her chest and sleeves. It is also my suggestion to get the undead to wear the clothes of ordinary humans. Of course, it isn't because I have a unique interest in looking at the skeleton uniform show or the zombie bunny girl. Rather, it is because the tattered and dull style of the undead is one of the reasons why the living would stay away from them. Now that they are changed, even though they aren't used to it, at the very least, it looks much more comfortable to the onlookers. I didn't expect that the product of my accidental failed experiment would come in handy. It was originally used to make ice in my family's storage room. At this moment, a few knight who rushed over after hearing the news rushes over. They skillfully flip over the debris of the wooden house and pull out the half-cooked goblin. As for the goblin who has been waiting in the ruins for a long time, he takes out 2 bottles of medicine and gulps it down. The burns on his body heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. After seeing me, he runs over energetically with a smile on his face. Old friend, big fat sheep. Oh, no, respected big sponsor, we have completed your order. It's time to talk about the remuneration. This goblin seems to feel that as long as there is money to be made, he can be even more zombie-like than a zombie. I am stunned by his actions, but the others have a look of satisfaction on their faces. This cycle of explosion, quick treatment, next explosion has become a daily routine for them. In fact, for the convenience of rebuilding and saving lives, their temporary laboratory is a simple wooden house. As I listened to their reports, I quickly figured out the reason why they were able to break through so quickly. That is to say, the original magic formation for the portable energy source was discovered by Olivia a long time ago. It's just that now that she was given this research topic, she suddenly remembered it. Yes, that is something I obtained by chance when I first started learning alchemy. It is a magic formation that allows energy to circulate and circulate. It can be used to cool down the basement for a long period of time. Using that as the blueprint, we developed a miniature energy source that can store energy for a long period of time. Originally, we used a military radar to develop a microwave oven. Due to the carelessness of the experimenter, penicillin appeared. While changing experimental equipment, we accidentally discovered X-rays, and an apple falling from a tree created gravity. In another world, facts have proven the importance of coincidence and luck in scientific inventions. I didn't expect that the alchemy research in this world would be the same. Perhaps, from the very start, Olivia was the only one who held the key to opening the treasure vault. I directly asked the original inventor to invent the energy source, and the result was that I successfully recreated this coincidence. That is a flowing liquid magic formation. It is a 3-dimensional structure with 16 layers. However, its total size is only about the size of an egg. It should be able to meet your requirements. Just by looking at its outer appearance, it looks like a sparkling and translucent crystal. A faint red liquid is slowly flowing within it. However, when I touch the surface, I can feel the vigorous magic power beneath the calm surface, as if it is alive and kicking. Well done, I will double the remuneration I promised. The next research goal is to equip individual weapons with energy sources and make them practical. It seems that very soon, we will have several new and powerful troop type. According to others, I had been wearing a strange smile that afternoon. I would smile when I met them, shake hands with them, and return their greetings with a smile. This scared quite a few people. However, I did have a reason to be happy. Other than the profits that this Olivia's magic box, I personally named it, but I rejected the name Olivia's love egg, would bring. This technological breakthrough also ensured that a large portion of the wealth that the magical machinery revolution would bring in was already in my hands. When the time comes, all the countries will come knocking on my door to buy it. According to my plan, I will definitely sell it, but how to sell it is a big problem. It is a must to extort a large sum of money from them. Perhaps, it might even help Donglan break the ice in diplomatic relations. This diplomatic thinking of making enemies everywhere is too foolish. Even if you want to cut them down with a knife, you should at least pretend to be friendly on the surface. That way, stabbing them in the back will be the most effective. During that period of time, I was constantly thinking about how to extort money from them in the future. Naturally, I had a strange smile on my face. The only thing that caused my smile to crumble was that I received 2 pieces of news in a row. The first one was within my expectations. Due to the Earth Elemental God's restlessness among the Beast Men, the territories of the Beast Men were already filled with spies sent by the various countries. Furthermore, Rosemary's news came just in time. This winter, the internal conflict among the Beast Men will end. The cold winter isn't suitable for the Beastman army, who lacks food and clothing, to attack the south. However, I'm afraid that the moment the winter thaws next year, the Beast Men will descend from the mountains. When I received this news, I sighed. What would come would eventually come. However, the good news was that at least winter wouldn't come. It was a good thing that we still had half a year to prepare. However, if winter really came, it would be much easier to deal with it using the cold weather. The other important piece of news was a sudden bombshell. The Shiluor Empire suddenly declared war on the 4 neighboring countries. The undead army immediately crossed the Death Swamp, snowy mountain highlands, scorching desert and other forbidden zones for life to launch a surprise attack on the various countries. This time, 8 of the 12 senators were mobilized. The number of troops mobilized was uncountable. The surprise attack was very successful. The human kingdoms weren't prepared for it at all. In the war, the few kingdoms retreated step by step, including the mega empire of the continent, the Swallow Federation. If this surprise attack by the undead was an unexpected turn of events, then the intelligence officers of the various countries were completely unable to comprehend what happened next. The 3rd senator, Pride Omar, who had just taken office for less than 3 months, rebelled. He led the army that he had just gained control of to rebel. At the crucial moment, the royalty faction chose to remain neutral. The parliament faction was forced to face them head-on. The Shiluor Empire was split into 3 and a full-blown civil war broke out. Clearly, the war was going smoothly. 2 of the small kingdoms were on the verge of being destroyed. Yet, a civil war broke out. Furthermore, it was a chaotic war that split into 3. What kind of rhythm was this? The pride of the 7 deadly sins, Omar, Mist, the super expert who suddenly appeared out of nowhere, was able to make the Bone Dragon Queen Grier voluntarily relinquish her position as the 3rd senator. In an instant, he became a hot topic in the entire continent. When he proclaimed himself as the son of Yongye, the head of the 7 deadly sins, and the fact that he betrayed Emperor Yongye but wasn't completely eliminated was brought up, everyone had the feeling of damn, so he is a super fierce person. Feyman, you are still as short-sighted as ever. Do you think that removing Omar's seal and letting him out would be able to suppress the royalty faction? Yeah, he can indeed suppress them. But do you think that he won't be able to suppress your Dark Knight Council? Aren't you giving him a chance to rebel by allowing him to lead a team alone? I could roughly understand Feyman's thoughts. He probably hoped to use Omar to suppress Lionheart and the others of the royalty faction. Then, he would seize the opportunity of the Holy War to gather all of Shiluor's power to wage war against the living. In his mind, Omar's rebellion back then was probably for the sake of greater authority and power. Then, I would be able to give him any promise he wants. As long as the army of the Death Dimension arrives, it wouldn't be a big deal even if he doesn't fulfill his promise. Omar, I'm afraid that other than me, it is impossible for him to accept anyone else's command. As the incarnation of arrogance, he can't accept the fact that someone's position is higher than his. To him, there is no need for a reason to betray. If he were to forcefully find a reason when questioned, I don't like you, you're too ugly, you want to command the beautiful me with such an ugly face, such infuriating words would probably come out of that darned brat's mouth. I understood that darned brat too well. With his super powerful undead control ability known as the supreme privilege of the Prince of Darkness, as long as the undead were under his command, there was basically no way for them to return. Perhaps, just like back then, he had secretly controlled a few undead lords. This civil war would be a long one. I couldn't help but feel pity for Feyman. He had painstakingly planned for so many years, accumulated sufficient military strength, sorted out the 12 senators, and even grasped the golden opportunity at the start of the Holy War. He had probably even investigated the invasion site countless times, but in the end, everything was ruined just like that. Who will win? In terms of strength, Omar takes 3 and Feyman takes 7. However, if Lionheart doesn't make use of this opportunity to play some tricks, he wouldn't be worthy of following me for so many years. Forget it, it doesn't matter at all. Regardless of who wins, Shiluor will lose. The ambitious Ottoman Empire's information network was truly powerful. However, the valuable information that those elite spies risked their lives to obtain fell into my hands right away through Rosemary's phylactery. The situation was vastly different from one another, but the only similarity was that it wasn't peaceful. The night of 100 demons, a storm is brewing. We have to hurry. The most important thing right now is the hybrid autonomous region and the altar of the far north. We can't drag it on any longer. After I settle the miscellaneous matters on hand, it will be time for us to head out again. Due to the scarcity of members of the royal family, the training grounds of the Donglan Royal Palace were opened to the Royal Knights training grounds a long time ago. However, today, the training grounds were sealed once again. Other than the fact that there were a few experts clashing and it was too dangerous for spectators, today was also the day for the testing of the newest weapon. Actually, the requirements for the new weapon weren't too high. At the very least, the core of the weapon had to be equipped with a fire conversion magic array and the outer shell of a mechanical magic sword. Regardless of whether it was fire or machinery, they were the specialties of the goblin engineers. As long as they were given sufficient bonuses, the efficiency and passion of the goblins were something that other races couldn't comprehend. It was unimaginable for them to work 23 hours a day. In less than half a month, the prototype that I requested for was barely completed. The crimson magic sword slashed down with a momentum that could topple mountains and overturn seas. Blinding flames covered the tip of the sword. Just the heat from the tip of the sword was enough to make one feel suffocated. The wooden rake in front of me was struck by the sword. Then, the wooden target began to burn and swiftly turned into black ashes. Did it succeed? However, in the next second, the gemstone vibrating egg on the hilt of the sword flashed and extinguished. At the same time, the tip of the sword began to melt. A few seconds later, the melted portion began to spread and the entire sword heated up rapidly before turning into a puddle of molten iron. Did it fail again? It seems to be a little weak. However, the wielder of the sword looked at the sword hilt in his hand regretfully, as though he didn't feel anything at all towards the boiling molten iron dripping on his body. After all, the temperature that he had reached before was definitely not something that a small magic sword could achieve. Nonsense, how could it possibly withstand your full power? The reason why I asked you, a semigod, to come here is to test its maximum output. How about it? Adam scratched his head. Bronze pinnacle. No, it can barely be considered as a lower silver. Obviously, to him, this level of firepower wasn't sufficient at all. However, his regretful words made the recording beside him burst into cheers of joy. This was already much better than what he had expected. Those present here were the top experts of the entire Donglan. The reason why I wanted them here wasn't just to observe the testing of the new weapon. So, since the magic sword and magic firearm have passed the initial test, let's start on the next step. We will use them as the core to create 2 new army types. In order to allow these new army types to truly step onto the stage of history, I have a decision. Valkyrie Basra, Adam, Old Ferdinand, Fade. The 4 of them were highly qualified great sword saints. Furthermore, they weren't just physical sword saints. Other than swordsmanship, they had their own specialties. At this moment, even if I didn't say anything, they would be able to guess some things. After all, I had already asked Basra for all the information on his Twilight Blade. Magic Swordsman Advancement. Yes, we will open up a path for everyone to walk on. At the very least, we must ensure that the path doesn't become a dead end after a certain point. Every job has its own skills and battle style that is most suitable for them. So, we have to create an advanced job that is suitable for these magic swordsmen. A type of advanced magic swordsman that is far more powerful than the useless arcane knight, an advanced magic swordsman between silver and gold rank 4 elemental swordcaster. I am willing to be the first swordcaster. Chapter 135. It isn't rare to see advanced jobs in this world. On the contrary, almost every expert who reaches a certain level will choose the most suitable advanced job for them. To other experts, it is a necessary requirement to reach a certain level. However, in my system interface, there is a more direct view. LV60 Warrior, LV7 Weapon Master, LV60 Justice Knight, LV2 Adjudicator, LV60 Mage, LV1 Mage of Fortune. The former are basic jobs while the latter are advanced jobs. As a basic job, one has to go through 3 stages, namely iron, bronze, and silver. Only by continuously grinding and maturing can one step into the advanced job. In reality, there isn't much difference between basic jobs. What they use are common skills and abilities. The main difference is still in their talent and basic attributes. Choosing an advanced job is also a choice for the future. They choose to specialize in something, which means that they are giving up on the others. After advancing to legend, they can even specialize in 1 or 2 abilities to crush everything else. For example, there is a certain Draken who is getting more and more Bayfoam. Recently, I can't even say his name. His normal job is Ranger and his advanced job is Beastmaster. In other words, after reaching gold rank Ranger, he basically gave up on his shooting, survival, trapping, tracking, dual blades and other common Ranger abilities to focus on controlling and taming beasts. When he reaches legend rank and gathers that mysterious heart of universal love, he is able to bring his beast taming and pet controlling abilities to the extreme. It is said that in that battle on the sea, he actually managed to make the sea monster hesitate for a moment. If it wasn't for the constant cannon fire, he might have succeeded in taming it. A legend rank being able to cause such an obvious effect on an epic tier sea monster is unimaginable. If he really succeeded in taming it, having a deep sea monster as a pet would increase his battle prowess by a few hundred times. This is enough to prove the fundamental subversive effect of specialization on experts. What? You said that this fellow defies the heavens, but he isn't a representative at all. You aren't wrong. I don't think that there is any other beast tamer hunter in this world who loves his job to such an extent. Willpower is the soul and the soul is the power. On the contrary, normal souls have the limits of mortals. The more stubborn and crazy a soul is, the more terrifying the potential. From a certain perspective, he is indeed far from normal, ridiculously far, but his potential is limitless. Thinking about this, I can't help but be stunned. If he continues to soar like this, the position of Beast God and Beast God will remain empty. If he really steps into the demigod realm, I'm afraid that the most difficult step of godly ascension will be unobstructed. This is too scary. I couldn't help but imagine what would happen if Bayfoam Heralt really became the Beast God. I was afraid that the entire world would be in a terrible state. Alright, I got off topic. Let's not talk about that terrifying future anymore. At the very least, I definitely wouldn't let it happen. Let's return to the main topic. Yep, job advancement. Advancing to a profession was about choosing a path to specialize in. It was like climbing a mountain. The closer you got to the peak, the narrower the path would be, but when you looked back, you would find yourself looking down at the peaks. Using a more realistic analogy, an ordinary law student would specialize in economic law when he was a graduate student, and when he was a PhD student, he would specialize in antitrust cases of international companies. This was from the broad to the specialized. It seemed to be getting narrower and narrower, but in fact, it was getting higher and higher. Could it be that they did not know the common law knowledge? Of course they would, it was just that there was no need to use it. For their pursuit, it was enough to make good use of their expertise. On the other hand, my situation was a little unique. Other people had one path, but I had 4 paths mixed together. If I were to split my efforts to cultivate all of them, even if I were to tire myself to death, I wouldn't be able to obtain much in return. Thus, my path was like the rivers and the seas. The 4 rivers would eventually converge into the sea. Then, what I needed to do was to find the intersection of the various tributaries and absorb the strengths of each to begin my own path. This time, my goal wasn't just to become a semigod. This was very difficult, but it wasn't impossible. This was also the reason why I had made up my mind to specialize in magic swords. At this moment, when a magic swordsman reached a certain level of cultivation, it was only a matter of time before he chose to create a job that was suitable for him. Rather than being stuck at a bottleneck and forcing himself to make a choice, it was better to make plans early. The reason why I chose to create a new job and not advance to the existing magic swordsman job was because even though the path I created might be slow, it was destined to be the most suitable for me. On the other hand, even though I would be able to advance quickly by walking on the path of others, it would be difficult for me to surpass the creator. Of course, from a certain perspective, this was a blissful worry. It was enough for a short-lived species like humans to advance quickly. Such extravagant worries were usually exclusive to long-lived species like the elves. When the field of magic engineering was truly developed, the experts that even the true gods were wary of proved the endless potential of this path. Starlight Shatterer, tonight, please stay. I shall strike down that bright North Star for you. A one-man fleet, billions of cannon towers, billions of radiance. My journey is that galaxy. Invincible hot-blooded fool, my battleship slicing blade, nothing can break it. Super S-rank mobile calamity who makes friends with cannons, that, please believe me, I just want to hand it over to a friend. I really didn't mean to destroy your city. The highest leader of the Origin Gnomes, Little Mustache infuriating, those who stand in my way are all scum, all scum. Now, when the dawn of a new era appeared in front of me, I was given a chance to be ahead of the times. If I didn't grasp it, I would really be an idiot. Of course, the other Sword Saints couldn't possibly see so far ahead. However, they only trusted me and supported me. That was enough for me. With the help of a master craftsman, the sacred sword Pale Justice had already been modified. There was an additional hole at the hilt of the sword. That was the place to insert attribute magic bullets. The entire sword hilt was an Olivia's magic box with a complete magic cycle. Vermilion bird sword seal. The red attribute bullets were embedded within and the completed magic box was instantly activated. Under my will, the illusory image of a scarlet red god bird turned into an emblem on the sword. Scarlet red flame magic wrapped around the body of the sword and the flaming tail of the sword extended several meters. Every time I swung the sword, it was as though a scarlet meteor streaking across the sky. Sparks fell from the sky, leaving behind a trail of Milky Way. It was exceptionally gorgeous. Every target that I threw into the air as a target would be set ablaze the moment I hit it. Following that, the enchantment on the sword would be consumed and the illusory image of the vermilion bird sword would also dim. After dozens of strikes, the sword seal finally disappeared. With a catcher sound, the empty attribute magic bullets were ejected. 49 strikes, better than expected. Can it be increased further? The total energy in the portable energy pool is limited. Unless I expand the magic box and attribute magic bullets, the entire weapon would have to be enlarged. In reality, the cost-performance ratio is too low. Furthermore, in a real battle, this much should be enough. At most, I can just bring more attribute magic bullets to replace them. Next, let's test the second item. Attribute magic bullets were miniature Olivia's magic box, portable energy pool, filled with energy of a specific attribute. On the other hand, the large magic box that was filled with it was pure energy without any attribute. When the attribute magic bullet was activated, the energy in the entire pool would be converted into the corresponding attribute. Once the pool of energy was completely depleted, most of the time, the attribute magic bullet would be depleted while the energy pool would still have some left. It could be filled with non-attribute magic bullets. Allowing the magic box to maintain the sword seal on its own and allowing the warrior to focus on using the weapon was the only way to avoid killing oneself by multitasking. Beside me, the researchers were discussing fervently. The sword saints and blacksmiths were looking at me with interest. From the start, they were either reluctantly agreeing to help me out of respect or they were working hard for the salary. But now that the technology had barely taken shape, this new existence was gradually proving its worth. The endless mysteries of this new thing had really piqued their interest. Black tortoise sword seal. The same tortoise snake sword seal was activated and a pale white chill started to spread. However, I was unmoved by it. Instead, I raised my sword and aimed it at the target that was more than 10 meters away and swung it with great force. Sword seal explosion. Along with the roar, the sword seal of the turtle and snake suddenly flashed, and what followed the swing of the sword was a snow-white arc. The speed of the snow-white arc wasn't fast. As it flew, it emitted a chill and ice crystals formed along the way, creating a beautiful scene. Catcher. CHA. The target was sliced apart and froze. When it fell to the ground, it turned into ice shards. When the sword seal was summoned, it was in the sword seal enchanted state, which was the most common melee mode. As for the sword seal explosion mode, it was to use all the remaining magic power in the energy pool to explode in one go for a long-range attack. Currently, this new job only had these two attack modes. As for the sword seal that corresponded to the 4 basic elements, under my suggestion, I named it after 4 types of god beasts that had never appeared in this world. Of course, because of this inexplicable persistence in the eyes of others, I received a lot of criticism, especially from those goblins who tried to compete for the naming rights of the work. They surrounded me and complained. I can understand that the fire phoenix is a god beast of the fire element, but why did you name it after the fire sparrow, vermilion bird in the eyes of the goblins? This is obviously a low-tier magic beast. As for the black tortoise, it is even more incomprehensible. A magic beast with a tortoise on one side and a snake on the other didn't even pass. As for the azure dragon, you are probably referring to the green dragon. Other people's natural talent is to control the plants in the forest. Alright, since it can fly, it is understandable that it is related to the wind element. However, the white tiger is just a rare variant. Even if its fur is beautiful, as for the earth god beast. To be honest, we have always thought that the ruby sword seal, gold coin sword seal and emerald sword seal are more realistic. Please respect our opinion. We, the craftsmen, also have the naming rights. Facing all kinds of opinions, I only replied with a single sentence, but it was enough to solve the problem. I am the sponsor. Alright, this is the good point of the goblins. Money is everything. The moment I said that, all the complaints were gone. This is also the only explanation. Am I supposed to explain to the people of another world that the god of the north, the black tortoise, is a water god beast and water magic is an extension of ice magic? While the god of the west, the white tiger, is a metal god and can only make do with the earth element. As for the azure dragon of the east, which is supposed to be a wood element, there isn't a wood element in the 4 main elements, so it can only stay in the wind element. The reason why it is called the 4 elemental swordcasters is because currently, there are only 4 common sword seals based on the 4 main elements. The fire vermilion bird seal, the wind azure dragon seal, the water, ice, black tortoise seal and the earth, metal, white tiger seal. Of course, these are just the basic sword seals. There are many other possibilities. For example, I, who possesses ice magic, can use the black tortoise sword seal to recharge the magic bullets. As long as I change the magic bullets in time, there is no limit to the battle of attrition. Privately, I opened up a few other sword seals that aren't suitable to be made public. Pride sword seal, holy light, who gave you the right to dictate what is righteous and use your own righteousness to punish others? Wrath sword seal, righteous indignation towards injustice and villains is the driving force behind the law. However, excessive righteousness harms both yourself and others. Calmness is a must. Never allow wrath to affect your rational judgment. Sloth sword seal, death is the sweetest slumber. It is a pity that it isn't time for you to get off work. So, make the most of your time and try your best to live an exciting life. These 3 sword seals correspond to my remaining holy light, law, and death powers respectively. I am currently using Olivia's magic box and my job advancement to organize and standardize my messy and chaotic power system, allowing the world to converge into a vast ocean, forming an even stronger combined force. Of course, it is obvious that these 3 powers aren't suitable to be made public. The current 4 elemental sword seals are enough for those newbies to study them through the night. Through the development of the sword seals, I have already vaguely understood that the future direction of this job would be to choose to delve into a certain system of sword seals, or to develop and learn new, higher-tier sword seals, or to open up more wondrous uses for sword seals. For example, using the Azure Dragon sword seal to form a storm that can blow away arrows, or using the Pride sword seal to disperse undead. I can predict that once these magic warriors are grouped together, they will completely change the situation on the battlefield. As for the magic archer job that was released at the same time as the 4 elemental swordcasters, in reality, they only use the explosive long-range attacks of the sword seal as a common method, and the sword seal enchantment as a variant job for those who are forced to fight with their lives on the line. If one were to forcefully find an obvious difference, it would probably be that the outer armor they choose are mostly bows, muskets, and staves. Of course, there is a limit to an individual's ability. Thus, I unhesitatingly became a hands-off boss, intending to use the collective intelligence. Fandirk, Lonnie, didn't you two complain about being unable to form your own army? I will hand this batch of prototypes over to you first. Fandirk will be in charge of training the 4 elemental swordcasters, and Lonnie will be in charge of the magic archer. Periodically, we will gather suggestions and new battle techniques. Together, we will perfect this job class. Just as Fandirk and Lonnie happily agreed to my request, I jolted violently. That familiar notification sound echoed in my ears once more. Ding! Congratulations, you have triggered an unranked quest, lowest epic my struggle. Quest requirements: do your best to perfect the abilities and techniques of the 4 elemental swordcasters. Open up new advanced job classes and build a new army. Let this brand new job system become the darling of the new era. Quest reward: based on the completion of the quest, there is no upper limit. If you are able to unearth this job to the level of a semigod, the reward will also be at the level of a semigod. Reminder: due to the long duration of the quest, the reward will be triggered and released at irregular intervals. Quest failure penalty: none. However, this is your own path. If you were to fail, your path to the top would come to an end. Without sufficient strength, you would not be able to face the challenges of the experts. Your goals would turn into bubbles in the end. This is already the harshest penalty. System notification: under your hard work, a brand new battle job class is about to step onto the stage of history. Magical engineering has been brought forward by at least 15 years. The karmic threads leading to the end of the world are already in a mess. All of the prophecies are destined to come to nothing. Well done, please continue to topple everything. Only then will your insane goals be realized. Furthermore, the massive amount of fate points that you will obtain will allow you to face any opponent, even if she is the legendary creator goddess. What else could be better than this solemn notification sound to prove that I am on the right path? Thus, I smiled gleefully. Fandirk, Lonnie, I will be depending on you too. Right, the name of the new army hasn't been decided yet. Why don't we call it? Please don't. Your naming will affect the morale of the army. If Lord Bustion dares to call him by his nickname, I guarantee that he will be filled with rage in an instant and grow to the size of a small mountain. Your Highness, why don't you let us handle such a small matter? The name of Olive's love egg has already spread far and wide. Initially, she was still happily telling others that it was an alias that you came up with for her, until the opening of the Siren Trace's adult toy shop. The depressed Olive hasn't stepped out of her house for 10 consecutive days. Everyone is trying to console her. Your talent in naming is too powerful. What if you can't recruit anyone after you name it? Yeah. If the name of the Night Hounds had replaced the Red Hunting Hounds back then, I'm afraid that no one would be able to survive. It is all thanks to Lord Bustion's desperate efforts. Cough, Roland, forget it. This time, the 4 spirits might be a little weird, but it is still acceptable. My opinion of you has changed a little. Everyone knows that your naming standard has been stuck at the level of a primary school student. If another little red, little white, little dog and so on were to pop out, the face that you managed to regain with great difficulty would be thrown away. Reconsider. Alright, those few knight who have been following me are so agitated. Even Adam came out to join in on the commotion. However, why does that pained look on his face seem more and more like he is trying to stir up trouble? Looking at the agitated crowd surrounding me in an attempt to persuade me, I swallowed back the name that was at the tip of my tongue helplessly. Instead, I could only mutter under my breath. Obviously, the twin-headed Chihuahua army is not bad. It fits the theme and is cute. Since the first completed magic sword is a silver sacred sword, why don't we just call it the Silver Sword Army? As far as I could see, even though everyone had clearly heard my whispers, they all went about their own business and pretended that they hadn't heard me. And when I walked out of the door, the cheers of victory behind me made me even more determined. Later on, I will head to the military to register the name of the army. You shall be the Super Silver Sword Army. Chapter 136. Fresh fruits and vegetables. I'm selling them cheaply. Hey, the one over there, the one who looks really strong. Our construction team is lacking people, and we're providing food and benefits. Do you want to come? Hey, freshly baked bread, buy one get one free. Which night is it? Nights are half price. Do you want one? All right, 2 copper coins. Tam, your family is back. That's great, it's great that you're back, it's great that you're back. Aren't you intending to leave this time? As I strolled through Donglan City, I saw the busy crowds, the caravans, and the various construction sites. I couldn't help but smile from the bottom of my heart. Rome wasn't built in a day. Even if a large amount of money was poured into the city, the current reconstruction project was still at the stage of cleaning up the old city areas. The supply of resources only slightly improved the citizens' living standards. In reality, the increase in living standards wasn't that great, but what made me happy was that the citizens' mental state was gradually improving. As the Donglan Principality traveled northward, it saw enough suffering and misfortune, and its mood became worse and worse. After encountering misfortune, people would always have bitter expressions, and their eyes would be filled with a numbness and blankness that made one's heart ache. I knew that when a person had no hope for the future, when they believed that their days would only get worse, no matter how strong that person was, their mental state would only get worse and worse. If they didn't even have a future, they would naturally become colder and colder towards others. The reason? It was probably because this country, which had suffered so many misfortunes, was about to face a new calamity. That year, the Mist Kingdom was destroyed, but they didn't fall. In the nearly 100 years since they lost their homeland, they didn't disperse. 200 years ago, when Donglan was gradually eaten away by the neighboring countries, they continued to persevere. 20 years ago, when they lost their last mining area, they continued to fight. 1 year ago, when the old emperor died in battle, they risked their lives to follow the 14-year-old princess in a desperate charge, and they achieved a miraculous victory. They were not supermen with iron wills. They were just mortals who missed their homeland. Perhaps in the eyes of outsiders, this wasteland of the north was just a useless wasteland, but in the eyes of the people who had lived here for generations, there was too much nostalgia and reluctance to part with this land. Outsiders were unable to understand the nostalgia these northerners had for their homeland. Perhaps, they were as firm as the glacier of the north, but because their roots were here, the stubborn souls of the northerners wished to protect the homeland that their ancestors had created. As long as we don't starve to death, and as long as that flag doesn't fall, we can grit and bear it. But not long ago, they finally couldn't take it anymore. In the year between the old emperor's death and Rain's return with supplies, many people finally chose to leave. I knew that they couldn't be blamed. They didn't, and they didn't go against their oath. The people of the Mist never feared sacrifice or war. They only feared that they wouldn't be able to see the future. When the shadow of war faded, the devastated farmlands and villages were reduced to a desolate state. Winter was approaching, and packs of wolves were loitering around. Yet, there wasn't even any rations for them to survive the winter. When familiar neighbors starved to death or froze to death on the streets, when the life-saving rations for this winter had yet to arrive, even the most optimistic of people would start considering their own path of retreat. I don't care about my worthless life, but my child, he didn't do anything wrong. No one could bear to watch as their child starved to death in front of them. The people of the Mist who left couldn't be blamed at all. Even though they knew that it was impossible for them to return after leaving this time, and that they would most likely die on the dangerous journey, they could only choose to leave. What was even crueler and more ironic was that the departure of these people made the already scarce rations even more effective. In recent years, the winter of last year had the fewest deaths. This cruel reality couldn't be blamed on anyone. If one had to find a scapegoat, it could only be the Mist royalty who didn't fulfill their duty of protecting the Mist Empire. If there were to be more, it could probably be my generation, who had left behind a hidden danger back then. Thus, even though she had already guessed that the Ottoman Empire was up to no good, as the last descendant of the Mist, Renée didn't even hold a ceremony to ascend to the throne. She gritted her teeth and continued on her journey. After all, if she didn't do anything, she would be doomed. As long as there was a sliver of hope, she could fight for it. It should be said that there is always a way out. If I had regained my physical body and returned to the surface a year later, the East Mist communal country might not even exist anymore. If it wasn't for my anger towards the Orland Empire's overbearing attitude, I wouldn't have met Rain. At this moment, after the bustling homecoming ceremony 2 days ago, many things had changed. At the very least, the blankness in everyone's eyes had lessened, and their hopes for a beautiful future had increased. Do you see it? The old district in the west of the city has been converted into a military camp. That is Prince Roland's army. Back then, I was the first to rush to the recruitment site. It was a pity that I was just a little bit away from passing. Stop bragging. Who doesn't know that even though there are quite a few armies and regiments that have started recruiting, in reality, the threshold is extremely high. The first test is a physical test. How many sandbags can you carry and how skinny you are like a monkey? You were eliminated in the first test, and you are still bragging that you were just a little bit away. You know so much. Could it be that you are also, at the very least, I made it to the 3rd round. I, Aiken, don't intend to give up. As long as there are more armies formed, I will give it another try. If it really doesn't work, I can even enter the city and become a soldier. Right, there is also the Church of Law. They are also recruiting. It is said that they will teach them combat techniques. Even though he was eliminated as well, that muscular man, Aiken, was showing off with a face full of pride. The surrounding crowd also exclaimed in surprise, as though they had seen some incredible expert. When a country is weak, the people are in danger. In a weak country, the people are lowly. No other race understands this logic better than the people of the Mist who have been through many hardships. Even though the Church of Law was established as the national religion, from a certain standpoint, Donglan became a permanently neutral country, everyone could understand the harsh reality. The beast men in the north could invade the south at any moment, and the neighboring countries were getting restless. Even if you didn't attack them, they would still attack you. In this world where the strong preyed on the weak, in order to achieve true neutrality, one had to possess a powerful strength that could remain neutral in the chaotic situation. Now, the establishment of every new army would become a reason for the citizens to celebrate. After all, this meant that the warriors protecting the country were becoming stronger, and the country was also becoming stronger. At the same time, these new armies could also provide sufficient opportunities for the youngsters to develop. Avalanche Defender, Eternal Wind Knight, one after another, legendary names and occupations jumped out from history. Those legendary heroic deeds attracted the attention of every youngster, and they looked forward to creating history with their own hands. In the past, even though they were enthusiastic about joining the army, it could only be said that they were just trying to make a living. But now, under the premise of protecting the country, they were striving for a future. The enthusiasm of the two couldn't be compared. When the citizens took pride in joining the army, it proved their confidence in the country. Of course, this confidence was in me, the legendary Saint Knight Prince Roland. But this wasn't the happiest news. The one that left the deepest impression was that the people of the Mist had started to return to their homeland. When the news of the legendary Prince Roland returning to the Mist country with his army spread, when their homeland regained its vitality, even though the situation was still uncertain, the people of the Mist still chose to return. Every day, there would be caravans and individuals returning to their homes. Outside the city gate, there were all kinds of carriages and travelers waiting to enter the city. The streets were filled with people who were returning with hard work but happy expressions. "How is everyone? I'm finally back." "You're back. It's good that you're back, it's good that you're back. Responses rose one after another, and the returning travelers were filled with curiosity about every single change. Many of them pointed at the army's flag, and it wasn't uncommon for them to grab acquaintances and ask them about it. This was only the beginning. Currently, those who were able to return were the immigrants from the neighboring countries who hadn't traveled too far. As the news spread, the people of the Mist who had left the country in the past 20 to 30 years would start to consider whether they should return or not. When the Mist war flag was raised once more, the people of the Mist who had left the country would reunite once more. Not too far away from me, there was a group of returning travelers. Some of them were wearing thick cotton hats, while others were wearing light feather hats. Judging from their different attire, it was clear that they had returned from different countries. Originally, it was just a gathering of people who had just returned home to discuss their experiences in a foreign land. But in the end, it turned into a gathering of grievances. Even if we were fortunate enough to not meet with any wild beasts or bandits and successfully complete the long journey, who would be willing to leave their homeland without being forced to their limits? Do you think it's good to live in a foreign land and speak an unfamiliar language? Do you think it's good to have the locals look at you as though you are a thief or a barbarian? The feeling of being isolated from the world when you open your eyes and see only foreigners and their language is so confusing that it makes you want to commit suicide. He was a young man, but judging from his dark eye bags and depressed face, his calloused hands and rough skin, he seemed to be an old man in his 40s or 50s. Due to the hard work and low spirits, he seemed to have aged beyond his actual age. When you are discriminated against and bullied because of your foreign accent, you don't even dare to argue. Who can understand that kind of indignation? In the midst of the arduous work of making a living, you spend the lonely nights in your homeland alone. You miss your homeland and your family and friends so much that you can't sleep at night. Who can understand that kind of feeling where your heart is torn apart? And as long as you show it, you will be an even more obvious anomaly. This middle-aged man who was in the prime of his life and should have been the most capable of fighting was just average. As he spoke, he recalled those past events and got so angry that he slammed his wine cup on the wooden table. It wasn't easy for me to make new friends, but when I was chatting, I accidentally said, Donglan? Oh, I know, it's the barbarian tribe that is about to be destroyed. Are you the legendary barbarian princess? The people around him all laughed. In order not to be isolated, even though he was so angry that he wanted to fight with the other party, he could only try his best to smile and pretend that he didn't care. It's too suffocating, too uncomfortable. The girl who was filled with righteous indignation also said so. From her angry appearance, it seemed that she had also suffered a lot of grievances. After the complaints, there was an inexplicable silence. Everyone suffered a lot. After the silence, someone took the lead to raise his wine cup and face the west of the city, where the military camp was. Thank you, Princess, for supporting this flag for so many years. At least, we are back, and there is still a place for us to return to under this flag. So, everyone, be happy. For the beautiful life in the future, cheers. Even though the burden of life had broken his waist, the young man's heart hadn't died yet. He was still looking forward to a beautiful tomorrow. Thank you, the returning Prince Roland, for giving us a reason to return. No matter what happens in the future, at least I can die in the land of my ancestors. Perhaps, we just need a reason to return home. The middle-aged man was much more practical, but his resolve to sacrifice himself made one feel exceptionally heavy and sorrowful. Thank you, even though it was words of gratitude, the more the toast went on, the sadder it became. Thus, someone couldn't bear to watch it any longer. Hey, don't speak as though you are about to be executed. You didn't see it during the homecoming ceremony that day. His Highness Roland's army is extremely powerful. Those undead knights are elites who have been through hundreds of battles over the past 300 years. They are the heroic spirits of our Mist country. With them as the core to build a new army, we will definitely be invincible. Our country will only grow stronger, and our days will only get better. The one who suddenly interrupted was Aiken, who was bragging about how he overcame all the obstacles but unfortunately failed to be selected. At this moment, he took the initiative to walk over. You guys are thinking too much. Hihi, You guys don't know how powerful our new guardian is. That Dragon Knight's bone dragon is so huge, even bigger than the city walls. Do you know who he is? He is the last Dragon Knight of our Mist Country, and even Prince Roland's subordinate knight is so powerful. He himself. Aiken was bragging about the homecoming ceremony and his appearance, and he was even more delighted than his own glory. All kinds of rumors were mixed in with the real information, and all kinds of legendary stories were made up. It didn't take long before I became a semigod monster with a 9-foot waist, 9 heads, and wings that could spit fire. The returning travelers were curious about what had happened in the past few days. Even though Aiken's words were obviously boastful and nonsensical, they still got more and more excited. Under the constant questioning from the audience, Aiken's words became more and more energetic. Whenever he went overboard, someone would interrupt him to correct him, and the atmosphere in the tavern became even more heated. You guys, how rare is this opportunity? So many Ace Knight are building their own army, and they have to teach them step by step. You don't even know that during the examination, all the nobles in the country came, but they were all rejected. I, Aiken, am actually just a little short every time. Who knows, as long as I can pass this test, I might be able to become a knight under Prince Roland. That wouldn't just be my personal glory, it would also be the glory of the next few generations of my Eddie's family. If I were to hear this news, my dead father would probably crawl up in joy. Go away, you have already failed so many times, and you still have the cheek to brag. I think there's no hope for you. You should join the city defense army as a soldier. PH, just you wait. I swear that I won't rest until I become a knight. After I finish this cup, I will try out the newly formed Silver Cross Squadron. Do you dare to follow me? Why wouldn't I dare? Let's go together. All right, these fellows' faces turned red as they spoke, and they became more and more agitated. They started dancing, and they were just short of rushing out to register for the examination. The Silver Cross Squadron has to learn how to use the power of the elements. This fellow's intelligence doesn't even reach 9, it's impossible for him to pass. The Silver Cross Squadron was the Magic Sword and Magic Spear Squadron that Fandirk and Lanny were currently building. After my Silver Sword Squadron was mercilessly rejected by the crowd, the emblem of a cross between a sword and a staff, which represented magic and martial arts, became the origin of the squadron's name. I already knew the selection criteria for that squadron. Looking at the muscular Aiken who was still bragging in the crowd, I shook my head. While I didn't think that he would be selected, I smiled and left 3 copper coins on the table, preparing to pay the bill and leave. Aiken, is it? Let's write it down first. At the very least, he has a sharp tongue. I can ask Kelly if they lack any advertising talents. At this moment, I was swaggering around casually, but I didn't have to worry about being recognized. Uncle, a cup of fruit wine is only 2 copper coins. Give me your tip, I'm happy today. That's right. That teenage boy actually called me Big Brother because my current appearance really was that of a middle-aged uncle. The time distortion ring that could alter one's appearance and age was the best disguise. Just by changing one's age, putting on a wig and a fake beard, I didn't believe that anyone would associate a middle-aged knight with Prince Roland. Of course, I was happy. How could the adorable citizens of the Mist before me not make me happy? Strolling along the streets, even though it wasn't my job to observe the emotions of the citizens, the energetic faces of the citizens before me gave me some confidence. Even if the standard of living was still tough, even if there was a high possibility of war in the future, as long as the citizens believed that the future was beautiful and that the country would become better, they would be able to face it with a smile. As long as they trusted me, I was confident that I could bring them out of this quagmire. Then I'll just take the opportunity to visit incognito. It definitely isn't to avoid the endless paperwork and administrative work. Darn it, letting me look over the logistics of the army and the next year's agriculture, are you intending to tire me to death? Looking at the time, the royal palace should have noticed that I had slipped away by now. I recalled that Kelly, who often gave people surprises, was probably handling the endless administrative work on my behalf. Considering that Kelly would probably take the initiative to look for some entertainment after burying herself in the sea of bitterness, I was considering the possibility of not returning tonight. I'm not trying to shirk my responsibilities. Rather, I'm trusting my subordinates and delegating them to me. I'll tell them this when I get back. For safety's sake, I should bring some desserts to coax them. I remember that there's a decent cake shop nearby. Considering Kelly's personality of making others suffer without paying for it, I felt that it would be best to bribe her. Based on her past records, she seemed to be fond of sweets. However, when I was looking for a cake shop, I saw a cake shop first. My good mood instantly vanished. Looking at the signboard in front of me, I was at a loss for words. His Highness Roland's direct subordinate, the Absolute Gentleman Alliance, is currently recruiting members. Do you wish to serve His Highness Roland? Do you wish to obtain the opportunity to become a priority candidate for the Royal Knight Squadron? Welcome to the Absolute Gentleman Alliance. We are His Highness' most trusted subordinate squadron. We can speak directly to His Highness. Alright then, I had created this mercenary group out of a whim, but I didn't really manage it after I arrived in Defender. Now that I was no longer managing it, it was naturally Beifeng who took over as the vice-captain. Looking at the mercenary group's headquarters on the 3rd floor and the number of people coming and going, it was obvious that this mysterious organization had been strengthened. As for using my name to recruit people, I didn't have any objections. After all, no matter how I looked at it, this mercenary group was indeed still under my control. However, what I was worried about was still, as long as you can prove that you are also an absolute gentleman who understands true love, you can also directly become one of us without going through any tests. I didn't even know how to comment on this recruitment notice. Did they think that they didn't have enough freaks and gentlemen? But when I walked in, filled with righteous indignation, I heard an even more speechless, tearful complaint. Why did you reject my offer to join? I am obviously a true big-breasted fanatic. I am also not accepted by the people of the world. HMPH, shallow. Just because of a characteristic, you love it. Doesn't that mean that anyone can join as long as they fit the characteristic? Do you think that a true gentleman is such a shallow thing? Your understanding of true love is too shallow. Momo's furious rebuke reverberated through the corridor, but I felt the urge to turn around and run. This is what I have heard: all appearances are fabricated. If all appearances are not true, then you will see the Tathagata. Young man, you are bewitched, bewitched. A true gentleman loves the beauty within the false outer shell. We have abandoned the illusory image to reach the truth. Yet, you have lost your original heart for that characteristic, thus falling into a disadvantageous position. Hearing these words that sounded like that of an enlightened monk, I was stunned. It took a long while before I could comprehend it, but Keijio's explanation had already reached my ears. What Big Brother means is that you are just a fake gentleman who is obsessed with a certain characteristic. A true gentleman loves something because it is from the bottom of his heart, and not because of a temporary characteristic. True love comes from the heart, and not from the outside. Not to mention the audience in the room, even I was stunned by his words. In the midst of love and desire, man comes and goes alone, lives and dies alone, and has no one to replace him. Go, our paths are different. What Big Brother means is that we live in this world, but our hearts are lonely. Our desires are too unique, because it is difficult for us to find a close friend who can confide in us. However, you are not a close friend of ours, so please leave. Finally, I couldn't stand it anymore. What is this and what? This is almost becoming a gentleman's philosophy. If this goes on, wouldn't I start a cult that worships Beifeng? Speak human words. However, the moment I rushed in with a furious roar, I immediately regretted it. The moment the door opened, Momo, who had been waiting for a long time, hugged me. Hey, little Rolo, I knew that you were outside. I have been waiting for you for a long time. While I was resisting the Dark Elf Knight, I could still hear the infuriating explanation from the other side. All that exists is like a dream, an illusion, a bubble, and a shadow. Like dew and lightning, this is how one should view it. Good, our path is not lonely. What Big Brother means is that, look at that Momo, she doesn't even need to use her eyes. Just by relying on her intuition, she can see through all illusions and know that the middle-aged man is her favorite Shota. This is what a gentleman should be. Wait a minute. Big Sister Momo's favorite Shota, isn't that? Prince Roland. Hurry up and run. What Big Brother means is, hurry up and run. Alright, looking at these guilty gentlemen scattering like birds and beasts, there is no longer any possibility for me to kill them all. Other than the female elf who is entangling me like an octopus, there is a familiar figure. Roland. Long time no see. Amelia. All laws are born from fate, and all laws are destroyed by fate. Prince Roland, this female elf has been following fate for a long time, and you have been guided here by fate. Great. What Big Brother means is that you are in deep trouble. This time, Casio's explanation was finally interrupted. Shut up. Shut up. Chapter 137. Even though the ground hasn't frozen yet, the winds of the northern lands have already turned cold. Based on the previous years, the first snow would fall in at most 2 months. The 7 months of unbearable winter would be the toughest and most dangerous challenge for all life. Survival of the fittest, eliminating the weak while keeping the strong. There is nothing more suitable than the harsh nature to be the final heartless and cold-blooded examiner. In the northern lands, the short end of autumn isn't a suitable time to travel. Who knows, we might end up stuck in some dangerous place due to the first snow. But, it's a pity that I don't have the right to be picky. On the day of spring next year, the Beastman army would probably head south. By then, it would be impossible for us to leave. Making full use of the remaining time to do more things is the most important thing right now. Mixed Blood Dominion, huh? What an embarrassing past. But, it's probably the only way out. The official name of the Mixed Blood Dominion is Charal Dominion, but not many people use this name. After all, that piece of land is also an embarrassing relic of history. After a war between different races, the defeated country would usually lose a large amount of land and citizens. Especially the women who were plundered would usually become the spoils of war for the victors. Furthermore, the long reign of the other races would also mean the birth of a large number of embarrassing mixed bloods. Most of the northern lands, including the Mist Kingdom, were once occupied by the beast men who invaded south for almost 100 years. When the demons invaded, they didn't do much good either. Along with them, several elf tribes who had a large share in the slave trade were also affected. Thus, there are quite a few mixed bloods like beast men, half-demons, and half-elves in this land. Of course, the majority of them are still beast men. Of course, these quite a few are still a negligible number in the perspective of a country. But, when the human kingdoms reclaimed this land, while the enslaved humans were cheering, these newborns who were caught in the cracks became very awkward. Their identity as mixed bloods allowed them to live better lives than normal humans when they were under the rule of the other races. But, from a certain perspective, they are also fated to become targets of resentment. When the other races were chased back to their homeland, these beast men obviously couldn't stay in their homeland. The characteristics of the other races on them would remind others of that painful history. As long as there was a slight friction, and someone with the intention shouted a few provocative slogans, perhaps it would turn into an uncontrollable racial feud. Not to mention, many beast men aren't kind people. During the era of the beastman's rule, in order to express their standpoint, they were extremely cruel to their human compatriots. The most horrifying tragedies often come from the hands of these bastards who were embarrassed by their own standpoint. When the humans reclaimed this land that had been lost for 100 years, the great trial and bloody vengeance that followed caused most of the mixed bloods to be sent to the gallows. As for those who couldn't be found guilty or were too young, they were sentenced to exile. This was the past before the re-establishment of the Donglan Principality, which is also the era of the founding emperor of Donglan, Charles I. In the crazy era where even the slightest bit of connection with the beast men could be used as a reason for the death penalty, the mixed bloods who were able to survive the unfair vengeance trials were usually children and women who had no ability to survive at all. Even those beast men who were known to be friendly towards humans were only allowed to bring a few belongings with them at most. At that time, in front of the people who were blinded by the desire for vengeance, no one dared to speak up for those beast men. Otherwise, wouldn't they die a wrongful death if they were to be labeled as a beastman spy? In that crazy era, not a single country was willing to accept these mixed bloods. The border to the Beastmen Highlands was sealed. The few who managed to cross the border didn't have a good ending either. They became the objects of the defeated to vent their anger. The so-called exile, to these weaklings, was actually no different from a death sentence. The only difference was that they didn't execute them personally. Instead, they chose to leave them to fend for themselves in the cruel nature. If the Mist Kingdom was the dark history of the entire human kingdom, then these mixed bloods would probably be the dark history of the entire northern lands. When all the countries rejected their entry and used the night to drive them away, the helpless mixed bloods could only migrate to an uninhabited land in the mountains. As time passed, when everyone started to forget about them, thinking that they had died in the snow and the hordes of beasts, in the depths of the mountains, in that miraculous valley, a newly born independent region appeared, Shiral Autonomous Region. The current Shiral Autonomous Region wasn't the pure mixed bloods autonomous region it was 200 years ago. Even though it wasn't recognized by any country, it had become a paradise for those without borders and those without laws. Humans, beast men, and elves could be seen here, but most of them were the mixed bloods who had unique characteristics. For example, the young warrior outside the carriage. He had the cat ears and sharp claws of a cat-type beastman, but a long lizard tail and the lower body of a centaur. Clearly, he was the product of multiple mixed bloods. As for the ranger in the shadows, he had beautiful white feathers, as though he had the bloodline of a bird-type beastman. However, the normal left arm and the long lizard-scaled arm on the right made him seem extremely incongruous. This is heaven. A certain beast master, who was becoming more and more philosophical, looked at this paradise and its residents. He instantly abandoned his way of speaking, which was becoming more and more difficult to understand. His words were so direct that it was impossible for others to evaluate him. At this moment, surrounded by so many mixed bloods, he was enjoying himself to the point of forgetting about his duties. He kept taking the initiative to chat with the other party, and judging from how they were putting their arms around each other's shoulders, it seemed that the mixed blood warrior with the bloodline of a centaur was unable to escape from this old fox's skilled hands. When we first arrived at this border checkpoint, these half-beastmen weren't very friendly towards us. Some of them threatened us with their weapons, and the ranger in the trees kept aiming his arrows at us. After I showed the merchant certificate issued by the Donglan Principality, not only did their attitude become much gentler, the inspection of our caravan wasn't as detailed as the previous caravan, and they even started chatting happily with the guards, which gave a certain man an opportunity to sneak in. Does Donglan have a good relationship with Shiral Autonomous Region? Heloise, who was lying on my head, was forced to leave after completing her evolution. Currently, she was so dispirited that she didn't want to move at all. Every day, she would lay on my head with a displeased expression. Donglan has a good relationship with all the powers that are viewed as enemies by the human society, but there are other reasons why they have a good relationship with Shiral Autonomous Region. That was a dark history that had been unraveled by time. When the mixed bloods were fortunate enough to find a valley in the mountains that was suitable for living, when the Shiral Autonomous Region had just been established, the former King Charles, who had been feeling uneasy, had secretly provided aid to the mixed bloods when they were short of food and clothing. Initially, I only intended to help the innocent and the descendants of the mist, but seeing how pitiful it was, I decided to lend them a hand. Alright, more importantly, if you were to only give food and clothing to the descendants of the mist, they would be snatched away the next moment. This was equivalent to harming their lives. Thus, in the end, I could only help them. Fortunately, we were still wealthy during those years. When a paragraph from the diary of the former king was unearthed, the 30 years of aid that the Shiral Autonomous Region provided became the reason why, even after 200 years, the Shiral Autonomous Region still viewed the Donglan Principality as its only sibling country. In the past few years, the two countries that were vaguely ostracized by the entire northern lands got closer and closer. Their close interactions further strengthened the relationship between the two countries. Even foreign merchants who wanted to enter Shiral would find a way to obtain a merchant certificate from Donglan. Many of the authoritative figures in Shiral Autonomous Region admitted that they were descendants of the mist. What was worth mentioning was that the warm valley in the middle of the mountains was one of the few granaries in the northern lands. After the tables turned, the residents of this land started to help the descendants of the former King Charles who were in dire straits. If not for the Shiral Autonomous Region's borrowing of food, the collapse of Donglan would have been brought forward by many years. This time, I was accompanied by a batch of medicine and other resources that the northern lands lacked. These were definitely good goods that couldn't be bought with money in the northern lands, and it was also an overpayment from the Donglan Principality for the food that they had accumulated over the years. Allowing them to owe a debt wasn't considered a favor. Allowing a company that could go bankrupt at any moment to owe a debt and be prepared to lose everything at any moment, while still allowing them to borrow more life-saving food, this was indeed a huge favor. Since the Sharal Autonomous Region hadn't forgotten the favor that Charles had done for them back then, Donglan would naturally remember to repay this favor. The good relationship between the two countries was also the reason why I chose to make it my first stop on this trip. In other countries that were filled with hostility and unfamiliar with the land, I probably wouldn't be able to do anything in this short amount of time. However, an accident gave me a new motive for this trip. Senior Amelia, what do you think of this land? Is it suitable for your plants to grow? Will you be able to cultivate the new seedlings that I want here? How can it be that fast? I still need time to experiment and verify it. Right, don't forget what you promised me. I won't forget. All right, recalling the promise that we made under the city walls, I couldn't help but smile bitterly. It all started from the coincidental meeting half a month ago. My 7 original sins are unparalleled in the world. They are much stronger than your weeds. Weeds? Hey, you really dare to say that? The archmage who had her head lowered suddenly laughed maniacally. Countless shadows spread out from behind her. The wind carried a sense of danger and the sour and sweet smell of venom. The blood-colored man-eating demonic creatures stirred in the shadows. Woo! As if feeling the wrath of the Creator, a certain creature seemed to be crying softly. Gigantic vines grew furiously in the shadows, and sharp mouths with jagged teeth appeared on the green leaves. Even though the man-eating flower's saliva was dripping right in front of me and the poisonous vines were about to wrap around me, I didn't move at all, as if I didn't see anything at all. I knew that although she was definitely the one who had killed the most out of all the people I knew and had the least sense of conscience, if she were to make a move now, it would be the same as admitting defeat. People of the same trade were enemies. When scholars met, especially when their fields of research overlapped and their opinions differed greatly, they would usually start by mocking each other. Then, they would start by shouting at each other and end by slamming bricks on each other. However, if that scholar obtained victory through murder, it would mean that she admitted that she was unable to defeat her opponent in the academic field and could only use such methods to eliminate her opponent. That would be a complete defeat at the root of the problem. As expected, the Archmage Amelia, who had acted as if she wanted to kill me the moment we met, finally restrained her anger under my mocking. She retracted her dangerous man-eating plants and returned to the battle of words. HMPH, the 7 original sins? You haven't gathered all of them yet, right? Gluttony, wrath, and that newly unsealed pride. That's only 3, right? I recently made greed and envy. I'm only 2 away from completing all of them. What about you? Have you gathered all of your 7 virtues? Could it be that you only have the temperance and diligence from more than 100 years ago? I even made humility to deal with your pride. Chem. Interesting. There's no proof. Take it out and let me see. Hearing this, Amelia fell silent. Based on my understanding of her, she disdained lying. There was most likely another reason why she couldn't take it out now. If it wasn't for that damned Adam who broke my baby. Alright then, hearing this, I paused in surprise for a moment before wiping away my cold sweat. I was glad that I had escaped from a calamity, but then I became angry. If Amelia's new toy was in perfect condition, she would probably take it out and show it off to me. With my current abilities, I would probably be instantly killed. However, I didn't feel any gratitude towards Adam, because I understood the hidden meaning behind her words. Alright, you Adam Han. Who was it that leaked information about me, causing this otaku girl who never leaves her house and doesn't care about outside matters to choose to go out? Besides, I finally understand why you've been acting so strangely for the past few days. You intentionally didn't warn me, so that you could watch me make a fool out of myself. But now wasn't the time to think about anything else. Taking advantage of the fact that Amelia was weak, I used my trump card. Do you still remember Teacher Heloise? Now, she's my greed. Hey, silly cat, wake up. I'm waiting for you to save me. Ever since she ate the dark god's breath of death, Heloise had been drowsy, as though she was preparing to evolve once more. But now, it was time for her to appear to save me. Teacher Heloise. Isn't she a banshee? After I took out that silly cat, I didn't need to say anything else. That slime monster with the appearance of a cat alien was more convincing than anything else. Thus, while Amelia was focused on studying the sleeping silly cat, I finally had the leisure to ask what happened and why this fellow would come knocking on our door. Let me explain. That day, not long after we put up our signboard, this lady said that she was your old acquaintance and wanted to give you a surprise, so she wanted us to inform you. However, Big Brother said that he could feel that she was of the same kind as us, but also your enemy, so he kept delaying her. That lady always locked herself in her room, as though she was researching something. As time passed, she seemed to have forgotten to ask about it, until you came knocking on our door. Hearing this, I didn't know what to say. Perhaps they really did have good intentions, but it could only be said that they were lucky to be able to survive until now. You guys dare to stay in the headquarters of the Mage Country's perverted murder case that spanned over 100 years. She even dared to commit crimes in the Cloud Tower for the sake of experimental subjects and inspiration. You guys, wait a moment, Big Brother. You are. He was a tall and muscular man, and under his tight leather clothing were muscles that were as sturdy as a statue's. He wore a pair of glasses that blocked out the light, and his calm and expressionless face gave off a feeling that he was an abnormally reliable existence. Pia Papine, the new number 2 of our true love siblings. We all call him Yonai Papa San. Alright then, I took back my evaluation of him as reliable. Merely being a new member of the true love siblings was still the best explanation. Do you have a daughter? Yep, I love my daughter Yonai deeply, more than myself, more than anything in the world. This is also the reason why everyone allowed me to join the true love siblings. Hearing this, I couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. This was just a case of having a daughter complex, so it was still acceptable. Yonai is a ship, and she's a battleship. Alright then, Momo's words instantly made me understand. As expected, things like gentlemen would increase in value if left unattended. So this guy was a shipgirl complex. I've heard that sailors who live overseas for a long time will view their ships as women. I can understand, I really can understand. Although I said that, I silently took 2 steps back, distancing myself from this group of gentlemen who were becoming more and more ridiculous. Hey, second brother Papine, I told you that you were overthinking things. How could the prince not understand you? He's the king of gentlemen himself. You're only 0.4 Beifong, but his 10 Beifong in Sulphur Mountain City. However, Momo's explanation was unnecessary. At this moment, Yonai Papa San had sunk into a mysterious frenzy. It's not such a superficial fetish. Don't compare those vulgar things to Yonai. Yonai is the cutest girl in the world. Do other ships have such towering turrets? Do they have such smooth and beautiful decks? Was there a ship with such a beautiful curve? There are. Looking at this unique daughter complex who had entered a frenzied state, I couldn't help but sigh helplessly. As expected, it was impossible for there to be normal people in the Gentleman Alliance. How could siblings who truly loved each other fall in love with a normal existence? Alright, regardless of the new gentleman who was still singing that warm engine room, that charming main shaft, I turned my gaze over there. Amelia was already squatting on the ground with a depressed expression, muttering softly to herself. A half-dead undead. How is that possible? This should involve the height of the creator. Did he improve again? Could it be that I've regressed? Seeing her in this state made me feel good. However, if I were to drag on for a while longer, if she really gave up on her last shred of dignity, she might go berserk and interrogate me for my technical information. It was impossible for me to defeat her now, so I offered my bait. Senior Amelia, as long as you help me with 2 things, I'll help you reach a higher level. Chapter 138. Raw. A huge wave of zombies is approaching. My plants will tear you to shreds. The grey zombies wobbled their way over. The abomination that acted as a meat shield was at the front, while the dense zombie army followed behind. Meanwhile, in the clouds on the opposite side, pea cannoniers suddenly rushed out of the soil and angrily spat out green pea bullets. Meanwhile, the furious watermelon grenadiers threw out explosive watermelons one after another. The explosive watermelon grenades exploded with a lethal shockwave, causing mushroom clouds to form. Without the support of conventional magic, the zombie army that mainly focused on close-range combat could only move slowly in the rain of bullets. Although they suffered huge losses in their advance, their huge numbers still made them a huge threat. When the two armies met, an intense melee battle had just begun. The most ordinary zombies collided with the nut defenders that were wielding heavy shields. The grayish-brown poisonous zombies took the initiative to detonate themselves. Green and gray poisonous clouds rose continuously. The plants that came into contact with the poisonous liquid and fog rapidly withered and died. No man's land appeared on the battlefield. On the side of the plants, although they were unable to move due to their roots, the plants that drew energy from the earth had an endless supply of ammunition. Perhaps they were unable to be as fearless as the brainless zombies, but at the very least, when the warriors in front of them fearlessly blocked their opponents, they could drown their opponents with countless cannon fire. Soon, the fierce cannon fire of the plant army caused a gap in the zombie army's battle line. When the plant's counterattack was about to begin, someone couldn't sit still anymore. Death will. Undead Race Collective speed up. Thus, when the mastermind realized that the zombie army wasn't in a good situation, he took action. He used up the last army command. When the black mist spread, all the zombies began to increase their speed in a frenzy. Not only did the frenzied zombies increase their speed, but the will of death also increased their fighting spirit. They were so frenzied that they began to dig out their intestines and throw them at their enemies. Protection of the forest and sunlight. Within 30 minutes, the attack speed and vitality of all plants will be doubled. Following the orders of the plant army's commander, the pea shooters' bullets formed a line, while the durian heavy cannons and watermelon grenadiers' firepower was even fiercer. The entire front line was filled with explosions, and countless zombies were blown into the sky. In the end, the zombie army could only helplessly choose to fight a battle of attrition with the plant cannons that were even more berserk than before. When the newly born cherry of rage jumped out and started self-destructing in a frenzy, blowing up the zombie army's main force, the berserk zombie army no longer had the combat power to break through the enemy's firing line. In the end, I had no choice but to kill the rest of the zombies under the fierce artillery fire. Winner, Great Wizard Amelia. As the brilliance dissipated, the battlefield in front of them turned back into a gigantic chessboard. The zombies' chess pieces were dim, while the plants' chess pieces were covered in a white brilliance, as if they were ready to make a move. This is currently the most popular magic chess game, Zombies vs. Plants series. Of course, the inventor and producer is me. What we are playing isn't a regular game, but a simulation of a real battle that has certain requirements for the user. As for the normal version sold to the public, it only uses small chess pieces made of magic oak, which isn't nearly as nimble as this realistic fantasy. By the way, due to the fact that in less than a month, there were already 4 different versions of this game, and it has already started to be sold to other countries, this series is also known as the vampire swindler who sells zombies. Sigh. This new version is still too unbalanced. Even if the zombies have the advantage in numbers, their chances of victory are still too low. The plants' explosions are too strong, and charging into the front line of fire would consume too much of their military strength. Looks like there's still a need to tweak the balance. In the next version, let's reduce the firepower of the German, Druil, faction. Losers really do know how to find excuses. Why don't we add 2 new chess pieces for the zombies, a bone dragon and a Lich? However, those wouldn't be zombies, and they wouldn't be considered as Zombies vs. Plants 3 Sword and Magic Edition. Forget it, names are just as important as integrity, so it doesn't matter. Let's just add them in the next version. Up to you. Based on the rules of balance, in order to satisfy the consumers, both sides have to add troops of the same tier. If you add a Lich, I add a Demon World Spirit Grass. If you add a Bone Dragon, I add a Bloodthorn Wall. In the end, I will still be the winner. Amelia smiles brightly. To be able to win against me twice a day, she loves this game to death. However, Can this really allow me to understand the secrets of life and enter a new stage? Although it is enjoyable, why do I feel like I don't understand anything at all? After inventing this game together with me, she became addicted to it. Along the way, we invented Zombies vs. Plants Tower Defense Edition, Zombies vs. Plants King of Fighters Edition, Zombies vs. Plants World of Warcraft Edition, and a series of other money scamming games. After playing happily for the past few days, she finally remembered the root of everything, raising her ability to create things. Thus, facing this doubt that she finally remembered, I smiled. Of course. I can't. This is just a pure game. Alright, put away your man-eating flower, let me explain. You liar. Playing with me again. Toying with my feelings again. I will never listen to you again. After realizing that she was fooled again, the shrieking Amelia becomes hysterical. Her phoenix eyes shine with frenzied blood tattoos and her long hair starts to turn into plants. Blood sprouts start to grow along the ends of her hair. The domain of plants is expanding. Soon, it will probably be a real-life version of Zombies vs. Plants. As a zombie who is about to be beaten up, I feel a lot of pressure. However, I have a trump card. I'll give you 1/10 of the money from selling the game. That, how much? The original version of this game is already selling well. As long as our manufacturing skills keep up, adding up the various money scamming versions, we will definitely be able to give you a few 100,000 gold coins. Alright, just a second ago, it was a storm. In the next second, everything calms down. That frenzied witch from before disappears without a trace. What is left is a gentle senior who is quietly sipping on red tea and smiling at me. This isn't because Amelia is greedy for money, but because the job of mage is a money-burning commodity. The higher the level of a mage, the more bottomless their pockets are. Of course, archmages can also sell their products to earn a huge profit. Not to mention that Amelia is an experimental maniac, she doesn't have the ability to manage budgets. She also doesn't have much time to think about the returns of her products. Even if she occasionally earns some money, she would immediately invest it into new experiments. Thus, she is exceptionally friendly towards sponsors. Now that she hears that there is money to be made, she immediately turns into a business model for spendthrift people. Wrong. She's a sponsor, not a spendthrift. That's right. Amelia is someone who casually invests without considering the expected returns. To dare to invest in this frenzied mage who loses as much as she invests, isn't that a spendthrift? According to Marguerite, Amelia doesn't even have her own research department, it has already gone bankrupt. Later on, it was revealed that she embezzled public funds and was kicked out of her position as the Truth Overseer. Now, even her teacher's salary is being used to pay off her debts. It's quite strange for a semigod mage to be in such a state. The mage country is filled with merchants who invest in new products. However, her reputation in the investment industry is so bad that she can't even scam many spendthrift people. She can only use her own students to do hard labor and run projects, using the students' small projects to support her research projects. Not to mention, this isn't just a game. These functional plant chess pieces should have given you plenty of hints. I don't believe that after these few days of training, your plant army planning and coordination have not improved at all. At the very least, you should have some inspiration and ideas for designing new plant army types. Amelia nods. This is the truth. Although it is still far from what I expected, it's not like she didn't gain anything. At our level, it's easier said than done to take another step forward. Be patient. Have I not done what I promised? Hearing me say that I will keep my promises, the teacup that Senior is holding in her left hand is crushed by her grip. Even though her right hand catches the falling teacup in time, and even though Senior is still smiling, judging from her trembling arms and twitching eyes, she is clearly on the verge of going berserk again. Junior, you really dare to say it. Back then, who was the one who said that we should throw away those boring ethical restraints and explore the mysteries of life together? I thought that I had found a rare confidant and was overjoyed. In the end, after you obtained all of my research materials, you disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. Then, a report letter was sent to the Truth Overseer's Parliament, almost causing me to be unable to stay in the Cloud Tower anymore. Ah, did I do all of that back then? I'm sorry, reincarnation causes too much damage to my memory, so I can't remember. We should look forward and forget about those boring past events. Right, how did you settle it in the end? Forget. Of course, I lied. Back then, this fellow had no limits. Even I, who doesn't have many limits, couldn't stand it anymore. If I don't make things difficult for her, who else should I make things difficult for? However, I am rather curious. Back then, I directly threw a report letter about her using students and living humans for experiments in the Truth Symposium's conference room. There were at least 5 Truth Overseers present, so how did she settle it? It's nothing much. Back then, my teacher helped me temporarily suppress it. Then, I killed a Truth Overseer who refused to let go of me and replaced him. Then, I paid a price to make the other Truth Overseers turn a blind eye to it. Damn it, if it wasn't for the fact that I can only use death row prisoners for my experiments, how could I have improved so quickly? You were only able to break through your limits because you were able to obtain experimental materials on the battlefield. As expected, you should collect as many experimental materials as you want. Hehe, there are no annoying supervisors here. Her hysterical laughter makes my hairs stand on end. I know that she really will do as she says, so I hurriedly stop her. Of course, it's impossible to directly stop her, as she is someone who doesn't listen to advice. Do you have any suitable research topics right now? After collecting a large amount of experimental materials, we will most likely have to flee. It would be a waste to waste them on normal research topics. After 2 years, there will be countless experimental materials for you to choose from. Also, compared to humans who die easily, the tenacious beast men are more suitable to be experimental subjects. For the next 2 years, you should just work on your theories and accumulate some temporary abilities. Hearing my words, she looks at me in a daze, and only after a long while does she speak. As expected, you are the one who understands me the best. When the others heard me say that, they would either start to scold me, or they would be scared to death. They wouldn't be able to understand how glorious a sacrifice it is to contribute to my research. You are still too soft-hearted to actually tell the truth to the experimental subjects. I usually just seal their mouths and throw them on the experiment table. As they scream, they go silent. Yeah, I am a girl after all, so I am too soft-hearted. Previously, that death row prisoner scolded me so harshly, but in order to prevent him from dying from the pain, I first anesthetized him before dissecting him. That anesthetic can at least be exchanged for a bag of new seeds. Hearing that, even if I go along with her words to make her happy, I wouldn't be able to take it anymore. Dissecting him alive and saying that she is soft-hearted, isn't she afraid of divine punishment? Looks like she is still an extremely dangerous person who doesn't view other lives as humans. Her seemingly gentle appearance is just a cover for the madness in her heart. I still overestimated her bottom line and moral integrity. Cough cough, let's put aside the experimental topics for now and think about how to earn research funds. If we were to introduce this Zombies vs. Plants Sword and Magic edition to the market, what kind of improvements do we have to make? Actually, we can change our marketing strategy. It would be too stupid to sell all the chess pieces and chessboards at once. We can sell them separately. Let's hear the details. If the chess pieces aren't complete, wouldn't it be impossible to play? Would the users still be willing to buy it? Stupid, you can only put the basic chess pieces and the original chessboard in the set. If you want advanced and special chess pieces, you will have to spend money. Of course, advanced chess pieces can't break the balance too much. As long as they have a slightly unique appearance and characteristics, they can be sold repeatedly for money. Right, the original is called the basic pack, so we can call it the expansion pack. As long as we release a limited number of new expansion packs every year, we will be able to sell well every year. We can also add a lottery factor. Each expansion pack will have a special chess piece that will only appear when the other party swears to never play again. To target the younger players, we can also classify the rarity of the chess pieces. The more precious it is, the more it is worth showing off. I don't believe that we can't empty the pockets of children. Oh, I have a whole new level of respect for you. You are practically a business genius. The rumors of you not being good at management are just rumors. It's Marguerite criticizing me again. It's not that I'm not good at management, I'm just too lazy to do so. Furthermore, these are all things I use to fool the sponsors. Only by selling the results of a research several times and selling it to a few people can I make a killing. Looking at this gleeful bad mage, I finally understand why, despite her astonishing strength and her ability to make discoveries that could shock the world, her reputation in the investment world is still so bad. You can still be saved if you scam someone once, but if you scam someone for 100 to 200 years and scam thousands of people, it would be foolish for anyone to look for you to invest. It's despicable, but I like it. Let's earn a lot together. If this kind of action is targeted at a small number of people, it would naturally cause the wrath of the heavens and the resentment of the gods. However, since it seems to be targeted at an uncertain market, there's no reason for me to give up on such a good idea. As expected, you are the one who understands me. Alright, let's not talk about how many children were frightened by this sinister laughter of mine. Let's not talk about how this Zombies vs. Plants Sword and Magic edition was cursed by many while selling like hotcakes. The reason why I spent so much time creating this unconventional game wasn't just to earn money. Another round. Another round. This time, the zombies will definitely win. Is there anyone who wants to start a bet? Then, Mom, I want it too. Can you buy a set for me? Oak is fine. So the undead aren't that scary after all. They can't even defeat plants. At this moment, we were playing chess on an empty field in a plaza. We were surrounded by spectators. At this moment, the simplified version of Zombies vs. Plants chess that we brought was already selling like hotcakes. The spectators bought the chess pieces, and they weren't satisfied even after watching one round. They were even more enthusiastic and wanted us to play another round. The consumers were God, especially the consumers who were willing to pay. And so, after chatting for a while on the stage, we started again. It's said that the Donglan Principality has the God of Law as its national religion. As long as one doesn't commit a crime, even demons and undead are accepted. It's said that even Druil has established his own academy in Defender. For an undead mage's item to be displayed on the streets and even be sold as a product, perhaps it's true. Can they accept mixed bloods? It's said that Defender has recently opened many new high schools that provide students with all sorts of powerful professions. Perhaps I can send my mistress there to study. Earning money was just a side effect. Displaying undead magic in broad daylight in a way that was acceptable to the world would allow the residents of Shiral Autonomous Region to understand and accept the changes that had occurred in East Mist. That was my main goal for this job. Defender's newly established academies are recruiting students. They are providing specialized training for Druil, Engineer, Alchemist, Undead Mage, Law Knight, and other combat jobs. The number of slots is limited, so if you want to change your fate in life, don't miss this opportunity. Hurry up. We have the recruitment materials here. You can get them for free. The recruitment staff that I brought with me was making use of the time to shout and attract the attention of the spectators. There were already people who were willing to go to Donglan to take a look. Finally, the people who had been watching from the shadows couldn't restrain themselves any longer and walked out. Your Highness Roland, Lord Gagalol invites you over for a chat. These are his exact words. We have seen your sincerity. Perhaps, it's time for us to talk about an alliance. After being mysteriously ignored for a week, on the third day that I started spreading the news to the citizens, I finally received an invitation from the Shiral Lord. It seemed that there was something that needed to be discussed. Chapter 139. The alliance was agreed upon from the start. After all, without an invitation of sufficient weight, it is impossible for the upper echelons of a country to casually visit another country. It was only natural that I was given the cold shoulder. They only invited an ordinary diplomatic envoy, but I was the one who came. It was equivalent to setting a bait to catch a carp, only to catch a whale instead. Naturally, the fisherman was unable to accept it. It would have been fine if it was just an ordinary diplomatic exchange. However, the envoy from Donglan seemed to be plotting something big. The moment they entered the city, almost 100 carriages unloaded their goods at the plaza. Furthermore, they even announced that thanks to Shiral Autonomous Region's many years of help, We will be giving you gifts while repaying the debt. Every citizen can receive a small gift. Less than 300 small gifts were all snatched up in less than a day. However, the citizens who heard the news had already spread the news. Probably, everyone knew that Chiral had come to Donglan's envoy, led by the legendary Prince Roland. A man's name was like the shadow of a tree. When this legendary figure who popped out from the legends suddenly paid a visit, the reception staff of Chiral Autonomous Region panicked. Generally speaking, it was common sense for two countries to receive people of the same rank equally. It was also a form of respect for the host to be of a higher rank. For example, the sovereign of the host country could receive the leader of the other country, but if the other country's king came, it would be disrespectful for the host country to send a middle-tier leader to receive him. And this time, even though the one who came from the East Mist didn't have any jurisdiction, as the ancestor of the country's founding emperor, his status was even greater than that of the future Queen Rain. Even the feudal lords who had the bloodline of the Mistfolk could only be considered his juniors or descendants. This was truly a headache. If Princess Renee were to come, it would already be giving her face if Lord Gagalor were to receive her personally. However, now that Valkyrie Roland is here, in terms of seniority, even Lord Gagalor's retired father isn't qualified. Could it be that they should dig out the founder of Chiral Autonomous Region from his grave and point at him and say, "This is the majesty that you have been talking about. Only you are qualified to receive him. That's right, he's already said that we're on our own, so please don't treat yourself as his subject, and don't follow the etiquette of a subject." That's probably the only way to not be rude. It would have been fine if the diplomats of the Chiral Autonomous Region were just looking for trouble. However, the upper echelons of the Chiral Autonomous Region were truly depressed. They had only invited the envoy to discuss the possibility of an alliance to deal with the possible invasion of the Orc army. Why did this envoy suddenly appear out of nowhere, and in such a high-profile manner? By now, the whole of Chiral knew that Donglan was here to discuss an alliance. How could they have a good relationship with each other? Now, Donglan had sent so many gifts and acted like something big was going to happen. However, there was no news from Chiral at all. For the diplomatic alliance, one side came prepared, while the other side was completely unaware. This kind of negotiation was likely to fall into a passive position. They had already held a meeting for 3 days and had yet to come up with anything, but I was bored to death in the embassy. In the end, I decided to initiate the next step of the plan in advance and began my own soft propaganda. At this stage, Gagalor finally made up his mind. Nothing could be discussed behind closed doors, so he might as well invite the person himself over. Just as I entered the territory lord's residence and was about to give the other party a surprise before I could even sit down, the other party surprised me first. According to the information, Gagalor Haber was a fatty. The muscular man in front of me with his upper body bare and the eagle tattoo on his chest that seemed lifelike as he breathed was definitely not him. Respected Lord Roland, I am Gauss, the son of the chief of the Eagle tribe, Karo. I represent my father and the tribe to greet the immortal. The warm handshake of the barbarian, if it was on the mountain, it would have been a hug, wasn't easy to bear. In front of a 2-4-meter tall giant, I seemed like a bean sprout. Being able to withstand the innate brute force that came along with the warmth was also an important factor for the barbarians to judge if the other party was worth befriending. This strength, it should be 18 points of strength. To have such strength at silver rank, how scary. As expected of a battle tribe whose members are all of the bronze bloodline. However, for me, who had over 20 points of strength, it couldn't even be considered strenuous. No matter how you pinched me, it would only hurt your hand. As expected, in the end, Gauss was the one who let go of his hand first and even shook it with all his might. Gagalor walked over with a smile and saved him in time. Your Highness Roland, welcome to the Chiral territory. I am the leader of this territory, Gagalor. 300 years ago, my ancestors were still your subjects. Your arrival is the greatest surprise and honor for us this year. Please take a seat, please take a seat. At this moment, I was trying my best not to laugh out loud rudely. Gagalor's round belly, short stature, fishman-like ears, and bulging eyeballs were just like what was written in the information. He really did look like a frog that was standing up straight. Facing the other party's enthusiasm, I smiled. 300 years ago, were we a family? Then, are you willing to become a family 300 years later? If the purpose of building an army was to raise one's combat power immediately, then education would be to nurture the culture and the foundation of a country in the long run. In this world, it wasn't just an empty saying that knowledge was power. However, building an advanced academy to nurture the growth of a job was the embodiment of a country's foundation, history, and overall strength. The reason why the mage country was hard to deal with was due to the large number of mage academies in the country. When mags, who were known to be difficult to deal with, and top-tier mags who had stepped into the realm of immortals chose a place to research, no one would be foolish enough to provoke them. The reason why Olivia traveled thousands of miles to the Ottoman Empire to study was because the Ottoman Empire was famous for its alchemy. Furthermore, their alchemy academy nurtured countless master alchemists and attracted countless alchemists to study under them. This, in turn, allowed the Ottoman Empire to take the lead in the field of alchemy. Now, apart from the training barracks, Defender was also building various academies, such as the Gardening Academy, Defender's Life Medicine Academy, the Pet Breeder Training Academy, the Nanxiang Law Academy's East Mist Branch, and the West City Mechanical Engineering Academy. If one were to judge them based on their names and think that they were normal academies, they would be gravely mistaken. The full name of the German Gardening Academy was the Druil Academy of Forest Warfare. Also a horticultural crash course, we also taught how to grow plants. The lecturers were all the leaders of the various Druil factions. In other words, many of the lecturers were extremely dangerous fugitives who were wanted in the entire continent. The Druil faction was viewed as an enemy by all the major human kingdoms. They usually lived isolated lives in the mountains and forests. However, the Druil faction had a unique and fast way of communicating with the various factions. With Eaglestorm's guarantee, many fugitives were willing to try their innocent lives. It was a mystery what kind of disciple such a dangerous master would teach. At the very least, from the very start, I met with a soft rebuff from the bad-tempered Druil. What? You want to cultivate a new type of plant that can withstand the winter and cold? Do you know why we became fugitives in the first place? It's because we want to punish those bastards who go against the laws of nature. Are you sure you want us to help you cultivate such abnormal life forms? We will really beat you up. However, when I raised my request, as expected, I received a reply that didn't give me any face. In the midst of his anger, Eaglestorm's reply could be considered to be very honest. Lord, I don't think there is anyone who can do it. We can allow the plant to mature earlier, even allowing it to mature twice a year under our catalysis. This is a privilege granted to us by nature. However, to fundamentally change the characteristics of a species, this is unnatural, and we are definitely unable to do it. In theory, as long as he is a Druil, he is unable to do it. We must follow the laws of nature. For something that goes against the laws of nature, we can only look for the Dark Druil. If the Druil was the public enemy number one in the land, then the Dark Druil who had fallen to the side of chaos were the lunatics who believed in chaos. They also believed that being unnatural was a mistake, but the Dark Druil was far crazier in every aspect. A man-made city was doubtlessly unnatural. Ordinary Druil would pursue a life far away from the city. More often than not, they would retaliate in anger when a forest was invaded. Meanwhile, the Dark Druil would attempt to create a hurricane or flood to destroy the city. The craziest part of the Dark Druil was that they denied the existence of the gods. They believed that the divine concept itself was meaningless, and that the existence of the gods' churches was a sin. They believed that all natural elements should be returned to their origins. Difficult to understand? Then let me give you an example. The Dark Druil believed that the sea god shouldn't exist, because a conscious controller of the sea was a threat to nature. That was why the Dark Druil would try to attack the priests of the sea god church whenever they had the chance. In reality, not only would the sea god church be attacked, almost all of the churches of the gods would be on their blacklist. That was why the gods of both sides unanimously gave the name of the Dark Druil to these radicals. Furthermore, they were still frequently on the wanted list. The gods could still tolerate Donglan giving the green light to the Druil. However, if they were to provoke the Dark Druil, They would immediately be suspected of their stand and would suspect if Wu Mianzi had gone mad. Alright, in the end, I had no choice but to give up. Fortunately, Amelia's arrival prevented me from coming into contact with the dangerous Dark Druil. The Virtue Garden Academy also obtained their most capable principal. What? Those little Druil who didn't want to be disciplined? I didn't see it. Oh, on that day, I beat up all of the teachers. I should be one of them. From the principal to the teachers, they all had such violent tendencies. This garden academy, which was supposed to be harmonious and friendly, would probably nurture a large number of violent people. Based on what I knew, the Virtue Garden Academy was the most normal one among the many academies that were about to start their classes. The principal of Defender's Life Medicine Academy, I was the one who came up with the name, was Heloise, nicknamed Little Black. I was the one who came up with the name. Other than teaching modern medicine, it also taught various kinds of necromancy. It was probably the first necromancer academy to operate openly in the kingdom of the living. In fact, I was also a guest professor of this academy's necromancer creation faculty. Its plague course was probably the best in the world. After all, it had Kakana and a bunch of super undead alchemists overseeing it. Alright, just because of this, the Holy Church had already sent out a stern warning and many countries had protested against it. However, I mercilessly threw all of this into the pile of old papers. Anyway, we no longer had any contact with each other, so you can protest all you want. As for the Pan-Continent Anti-Undead Treaty, I had always thought that treaties that I didn't sign were useless. Nanxiang Academy of Law's Donglan Branch campus was needless to say. It was nothing more than the surface version of the main campus of the underground world. However, due to Kolos being the signboard girl and Shueti being the honorary principal, their enrollment this year had far surpassed the other academies. West City's mechanical engineering faculty was mainly divided into two major faculties, the Gnome Self-Destruction faculty and the Gnome Death-Seeking faculty. The headmasters of the faculty were the Self-Destruction masters of the Gnome Engineering faculty and the Gnome Death-Seeking masters of the Gnome Engineering faculty. Alright, I admit that the above is just my personal bias and nonsense, but I've always felt that this is the most fundamental characteristic of this faculty. Alright, that was all for the introduction of the academy. What? There was still a lack of a pet breeder training school? Alright, in the end, I couldn't ignore the past. Let me give a simple introduction. Beifeng, the principal of the pet breeder training school. What he taught was various tricks to get along with beasts. There shouldn't be much to say about the rest. Back then, when I saw this proposal, I almost stuffed Beifeng into the main cannon of the Borealis and sent him out of Aishi with a single shot. However, this was the reward he requested for miraculously completing the Winter Wolf taming mission. Furthermore, it had already been proven that in the northern lands, where magical beasts were everywhere, Beifeng's abilities might really be the most important to be taught. In the end, under the temptation of power, I could only helplessly compromise. However, in order to avoid being an eyesore, I left this academy in the outskirts of the city. As for their office building, I arranged for them to be in the abandoned Big Ben clock room, which was more than 10 floors high. It was a perfect place for them to train their bodies. You want strong warriors? Sure, go and train them yourself and groom them. You intend to send out your troops just by building a military camp? The galactic war next door is calling for you. Alright, since the system complained that building a military camp was unable to send out troops, I would just build an academy to groom the backbone of the future. In any case, by throwing a person in, a few years later, wouldn't I be able to obtain a strong troop type? There wasn't much of a difference from building an unscientific military camp. It was just that the cycle was longer and the investment was higher. And now, while I was discussing important matters with the Lord of Sharal and the Barbarian Prince, my entourage should have followed my instructions and spread the recruitment brochures of these academies across the entire Sharal autonomous region. They should be traversing through the small paths in the countryside and making a ruckus in the city's plaza, doing their best to attract this year's freshmen. Of course, there was also the possibility of them fighting over the freshmen. Mixed bloods are being discriminated against. Don't worry, madam. There wasn't such a thing in our Donglan previously. Now, with the forbidden spell of the Sinless City as a guarantee, Why would your son be bullied? Right, please accept this leaflet. My serial number is on it. If you bring this to the West City Mechanical Engineering School to register, you can save 5 gold coins in school fees. No, I didn't take any commission, really. Alright, madam, I really admire you. Alright, I will save 7 gold coins in school fees, but you have to introduce me to other students. For every student that you introduce, I will give you a commission of 2 gold coins. The Goblin Cabbler was currently the number 1 in terms of performance because he had already recruited dozens of students. The current him could just sit down and count his money. Does the Alchemy Academy have any? I want my daughter to learn alchemy, but we don't have any decent alchemy academy here. There really isn't any, but you can consider letting your daughter register for the Defender Life Medicine Academy. Their epidemic prevention faculty, the name that the plague faculty advertises to the public, Headmaster Kakana is a legend rank alchemist. Her 2 apprentices are legend rank alchemists as well. With their guidance, your daughter will definitely become a superior alchemist. Alright, a young lady whose goal was to become an alchemist, under the deceit of a student recruitment trafficker, ended up walking the path of a necromancer. Donglan's Best Fleet Command Academy is recruiting new students. Do you want to become the new admiral and have a harem of countless warships? Welcome to the soon-to-be-established Donglan First Royal Navy Academy. Alright, no matter how hard Kenai's father, Sampil Papine, tried his best to advertise, the number of students he recruited was destined to be the lowest. But now, he only managed to recruit 2 future black admirals who refused to admit that they were black-skinned, and it was apparent that they had some sort of cognitive impairment. The reason? Donglan Principality is a landlocked country, so it doesn't have a navy. Most people would probably think that he was joking. Of course, the crux of the problem lies in the fact that I wouldn't allow him to say that the Donglan Navy is currently under construction. It was already confirmed that he was first from the bottom, so the second from the bottom would probably be the Garden Academy. To those who didn't know the truth, the name of this Garden Art Academy was overly artistic, and it might not be able to fill their stomachs in the competition for jobs in the future. But to those who understood the situation, sending themselves or their children to be groomed by a wanted criminal to become the public enemy of the continent, Druil, was obviously a little unexpected. What made me the most speechless was the recruitment method of a certain Draken. He didn't even prepare any recruitment materials. All he did was hold a few banquets and barbecue parties in the plaza, and then chat with the guests who were of the same wavelength as him. Somehow, the number of students he recruited rose to 2nd place. Hey, you already have so many students. Why don't you split it between us? Let me take a look at the rankings. It seems that we do have more than 20 free students. How about this, 100 gold coins each, you can take it if you want. It was no wonder that they were working so hard to recruit students, to the point where there were already signs of them selling their students. After all, I intended to use their recruitment results to calculate the budget for the various academies next year. This was a huge sum of gold coins. Such a situation didn't only happen in Shiral. The recruitment of students from all over Donglan had already begun before we set off. From a certain standpoint, I wasn't greedy for short-term effects. Instead, I was working hard to change this weak country from its roots. Of course, I had my own plans for the recruitment of students from Shiral by throwing out a huge sum of gold coins to increase the motivation of the recruitment staff. At this moment, I was in a conference room, looking gleefully at the 2 officials of other countries who were in a daze. What made them pale in fright, disregarding diplomatic etiquette, were the 2 pictures in front of them. One of them was the barbarians' holy land, Osalavin Peak. In the picture, the peak had already turned into ruins surrounded by the flames of war. On the other hand, the picture in front of Gagalor was a picture of the Shiral Autonomous Region. There wasn't any so-called autonomous region there, just a barren land filled with dense trees. Without my existence, there wouldn't be the rise of the Donglan Principality, there wouldn't be any reinforcements from Donglan, the mixed bloods might not be able to persist in finding Shiral, there wouldn't be any Shiral Autonomous Region. I could understand such logic, but in the eyes of the leader of the Shiral Autonomous Region, what it represented was terrifying. Could it be that Shiral has been completely erased, to the point where there isn't even a trace of it left. These two pictures are pictures of the future that I obtained through my prophecy ability. In the name of the holy light, I can vouch for their authenticity. You can take a close look at what will happen to the land of your people in the future. After that, think about it carefully before you answer my suggestion. Looking at the two leaders whose faces turned pale in an instant, I smiled gleefully. Chapter 140. If it was just the first time I met that lord, it would be hard to imagine that he would be a famous figure in history. Beneath his bright golden hair was a handsome and cheerful face, and he always had a kind smile on his face. Even in front of servants like us, he spoke softly without a trace of arrogance, and he didn't have the so-called royal aura that those nobles loved to talk about. He spoke his mind directly, and sometimes, he would even lower his head shyly and think deeply, just like a young boy who had just started working. The moment he spoke, everything changed. In the negotiations that decided the fate of the three countries, from the very start, the situation was completely controlled by that young boy. Silver Fox of Shea Lord Gagalol and War God of Sid Lord Gauss are undoubtedly outstanding heroes, and history has proven their astonishing intelligence and strength. However, in the negotiations with His Highness Roland, they behaved like children who had just started their careers. In the end, the situation was completely controlled by His Highness. But from a certain perspective, perhaps it was also because of this that the new Northland Alliance, with the alliance of the three countries as the cornerstone and Donglan as the core, was able to rise so quickly. From the memoirs of the secretary of the Shea Lord's residence, Kasola. This is absolutely impossible. You are all lying. This is definitely a forgery. No matter how real a forgery is, it can't prove anything. The surrounding mountains were so familiar, and just by looking at the familiar surroundings, it was without a doubt my hometown, Shea. However, it was different from the usual prosperity of Shea, and the portrait was of a barren land with nothing. There were no fools here, and Gagalol had already guessed it. If this portrait was real, it could only mean that there had never been a civilization here, or that the civilization had already disappeared with the wind. Furthermore, it had been completely destroyed and abandoned for at least a few hundred years before it could form such a barren land. Mph, who do you think you are, and who does he think he is? Would he lie to you? Aren't you thinking too highly of yourselves? Take a mirror and look at yourself. Facing the doubts of the host, I rubbed my nose and smiled bitterly, but Amelia arrogantly scolded. This is. Amelia, who had just jumped out, was undoubtedly very eye-catching. According to Shorin's intelligence, she was undoubtedly just a mage accompanying the group. She didn't even have a robe or an emblem that represented her rank. She was probably a wild mage who wasn't certified. However, she was arrogantly scolding Gagalol. She didn't have the humility and caution that a member of the group should have. Amelia Milan. You might not have heard of this name, but the former truth overseer of Arladanti should know of me. I haven't been out for 100 years. I don't know if the youngsters nowadays still remember me. Yes, they had definitely heard of it. Judging from the way they subconsciously pulled their chairs away to keep their distance when they heard this name, it was probably a notorious name that left a deep impression on them. Senior Amelia, may I ask what you've been up to recently? I felt helpless. No matter how ridiculous a shut-in girl who had stayed at home for several hundred years was, there was no way she could be so domineering. I haven't done anything recently. I've only accepted some commissions to do some small business. Was the Thorn Forest in the Bardi Empire you're doing as well? And the famous curse of deep sleep? The young clerk by the side suddenly interrupted, causing Amelia to smile gleefully. Of course. Even though they are my relatives, they dared not to invite me to the little princess's birthday celebration. Thus, I took my revenge. When that little girl was 16 years old, a thorn needle was placed on the spindle outside her room, and within it was the sleeping poison that I had prepared. Hearing this, I faintly felt that something that would ruin my worldview had happened. However, at this moment, Amelia was already laughing maniacally gleefully. Ha ha, as expected, her finger was pricked and she fell into an eternal sleep. Initially, seeing that we are relatives, I didn't want to go too overboard, so I left a solution. They actually dared to send the night squadron to deal with me. They were practically courting death. Thus, I set up the thorn forest to trap all of them inside, causing those Night Squadron to starve to death. Is that the legendary kiss of true love? It's so romantic. It's practically a fairy tale-like romantic love. Sometimes, I really couldn't understand women. It was clearly a terrorist attack that nearly destroyed an entire kingdom, but in their eyes, it became a romantic legend. At this moment, the female clerk was looking at Amelia with a face full of worship. However, Amelia directly shook her head. True love. Little girl, magic isn't omnipotent, and the human heart is impossible to predict. If I knew who was true love and who was fake love, I wouldn't have been deceived so badly back then. At this point, a blood-red flash appeared in her eyes, and it was obvious that she was about to go berserk again. Her killing intent locked onto me, sending chills down my spine. Fortunately, she returned to normal in the next moment. It's just a small magic. I locked onto a specific target. Back then, I lost confidence in men and thought that they were only after the female body. Thus, in order to find a good and honest husband for little Nana, I set up a curse that only those who were interested in the female body could remove it. Yep, according to the common people, it should be called necrophilia. The pitiful little girl's pen and notebook fell to the ground in fright. How could she accept the truth of what was supposed to be a romantic and legendary love story being turned into reality in such a destructive manner? I left a message with a solution long ago. It was just a friendly little joke. Why are you still attacking me? Just find a necrophilia to solve the problem. If it wasn't for the fact that we're relatives, I would have long since gone to their doorstep. The delighted Amelia seemed to think that someone else was in the wrong. However, I felt that the Bardi Empire was already taking advantage of the fact that we were relatives by not declaring war on Arladanti. I remember that Princess Fina Milan ended up marrying the prince who awakened her. Then, that prince became the previous emperor of the Bardi Empire, which means, Gagalol hurriedly covered the clerk's mouth. How could he allow her to finish her sentence? The Bardi Empire was a mega-empire. If the news that the previous emperor was a necrophilia spread through the Bardi Empire, it would be a huge problem. Actually, the sleeping poison and the wall of thorns aren't my proudest creations. The Hill Kingdom's Ice Queen's poison apple is. I faintly guessed that the information I was about to hear would definitely destroy my worldview, but it was already too late to cover my ears. The Ice Queen has a good relationship with me. She specifically asked me for the poison apple, which has the same type of poison as the thorn poison. This time, her target is still a necrophilia. But why are all the passing princes necrophilia? I really don't understand. Princess Snow White and 7-armed gold dwarfs. This is my favorite fairy tale. Please stop talking about it. You're ruining my childhood. Alright then, where should I start commenting from? Should I start with the passing necrophilia prince or the gold dwarven warriors? Amelia, can't you do something normal? Why do you always act as the antagonist in every fairy tale and then jump out to ruin my childhood? That Cinderella with small feet and the crystal shoe that only she can wear. Could it be that you? Oh, that. This time, I'm the main character. Don't you know that there's a pumpkin carriage in the story? I'm the witch who created the carriage. Right, the prince this time isn't a necrophilia, but a foot fetish. Otherwise, he wouldn't be unable to remember Cinderella's face and insist on using the shoe to test it out. He even caused me to intentionally leave the shoe behind. As expected, all princes are a bunch of perverts. Do you have such a huge grudge against the princes? Marrying a prince on a white horse is every girl's dream. That's how I was scammed back then. Now, the facts tell us women that all princes are a bunch of bastards and pervert. It's a pity that no publishing company dares to publish the truth about princes with detailed data and rich examples. Those cowardly bastards. Even though they are facts that I personally experienced, they aren't even willing to pay for it to be published. Alright, this destroyer of childhood actually intends to publish a book to completely destroy the prince's image in the eyes of the world. Just how much hatred does she have? Thus, after understanding why Amelia is so notorious, after Gagalol and the others heard his name and retreated far away from him, as the only human prince present, as the originator of this grudge, I unhesitatingly retreated far away from him. Let me tell you clearly. In the circle of semigods and true gods, the undying Roland is much more famous than me. You think that he is lying to you? Think about what you have that is worth him lying to. The undying Roland? This is the first time I have heard of this title. Haven't I been killed many times already? It means that you are similar to that black thing, unable to be killed no matter what. Even if you are killed, a few decades later, you can jump out again to stir up trouble. Although not dying easily is a characteristic of the strong, you are probably the only one who is able to resurrect after having your body and soul destroyed. For someone like you who holds a grudge and is unscrupulous, the most important thing is that you are unable to be killed no matter what, and you have to constantly be on the lookout for revenge. No one would want to provoke you. Alright, hearing this, I paused for 2 seconds. As expected, the system jumped out. Ding! The semigod honorary title Undying Roland has been obtained. After equipping it, there isn't much effect. This time, it is really just a title. At most, it can scare people. It isn't a product of the system, so there isn't any special effect. However, I can help you add a layer of illusion of a cockroach on you, turning you into a Martian with a cockroach. Do you want to try? Are there cockroaches on Mars? System, continue bullshitting. Do you think that I didn't study before I transmigrated? I am obviously an octopus alien. Returning to the main topic, this negotiation has been disrupted by Amelia. No matter what Gagalol and Gauss had prepared, no matter how they agreed on advancing and retreating together, it is inevitable that they will waver. From a certain perspective, bringing Amelia to the negotiation is indeed a brilliant move. Even if we didn't discuss it beforehand, seeing that the other party has agreed on advancing and retreating together, one of us plays the good cop and the other plays the bad cop, throwing a chain of information bombs to disrupt the other party's arrangements, thus winning the initiative in the negotiation. When we make use of the other party's unequal information to create an unequal situation, we create an illusion that it doesn't matter whether we negotiate or not. In fact, it matters. On the other hand, the other party is facing an unknown prophecy of destruction, so naturally, they need more information. The situation has changed from us taking the initiative to the other party coming to us begging. All of this is just an exchange of glances after we entered the door. At this moment, we look at each other and smile. At this point, we have already won. Apart from those troublesome aspects, Amelia is strong and cunning. She really is a good partner. Especially when I want to maintain my image as a saint knight hero prince, she dares to do anything and says anything. She is basically the best substitute for me. Such a thought flashes through my mind. However, it is locked tightly in the deepest part of my mind. A perverted murderer and a crazy doctor without any bottom line of conscience. Just these two difficult aspects alone are enough to make it impossible to deal with them. Now isn't the time to think too much. Taking advantage of the unsettled state of mind of the other party to press on is the most urgent matter at hand. Lords, I have a small suggestion. Perhaps, in order to deal with the future crisis, we should strengthen the communication channels between us. Perhaps, a mutually dependent alliance is a good idea. You don't have to pay much, but in return, you will receive everything. After a long and arduous negotiation, when I step out of the Domain Lord's residence, I am so happy that I want to sing. However, when I remember that my musical talent is comparable to that of Grier, the throat of death, I dispel this thought. However, my excited footsteps become lighter. Since the overall situation of the alliance has been settled, all that is left is for the negotiators to slowly wrangle with each other. This alliance is the greatest source of confidence for the rise of Donglan. The food and manpower of Shiral Autonomous Region is just an expected harvest. The mining rights of the Barbarian Mountains will become the core of this new alliance. Yes, even if Prince Gauss doesn't come, I will still go. I have long set my eyes on their mountains. It is a publicly acknowledged fact that the Northern Lands is the richest mining area in the entire continent. However, the shallow mining areas of the various kingdoms have already been excavated and become the focal point of contention. The current Donglan lost its last mining area 20 years ago and also lost the foundation to establish itself in the Northern Lands. This is the reason for its continuous decline. In order to reverse all of this, It isn't enough to just rely on reducing expenditure. We must open up a new source of income. At this moment, after the God of Law is established as the national religion of Donglan, using war to seize the mining areas is no longer an option. Then, there is only one way left to find a new mining area. In reality, this is basically an impossible task. Every inch of Donglan's land has been explored repeatedly. Even if there are hidden mining areas, it is obvious that they are beyond the current mining technology's capabilities. That is not much different from having none. However, in reality, there is indeed a rich mining area in the northern lands. It is a virgin land that has yet to be excavated and many people know about it. However, no one dares to excavate it. It is just that the mining technology is too difficult and the rewards are disproportionate. To outsiders, obtaining the trust of the barbarians is simply inconceivable. However, to the Mist royal family, which has been passed down for thousands of years, this brotherly relationship formed through the many years of war and mutual aid is still maintained. It isn't difficult to obtain the trust of the barbarians. This isn't the main point. Even if you manage to excavate the gemstones, how do you intend to transport them down the mountain? That mountain path isn't something that a normal person can traverse. It is precisely because of the impossibility of transporting the gemstones that no one has attempted to excavate that mining area for so many years. Perhaps, I should introduce to you the creation that I am proud of, Northern Light of Envy. After we left, Gagalol and Gauss didn't panic like before. Instead, they calmly and meticulously discussed what had just happened. Brother Gauss, do you think that what that Roland said is true? The word brother carries a heavy weight among the barbarians. If you casually use it to establish a friendship, getting your teeth knocked out would be considered a light punishment. However, from Gauss' calm acceptance, it seems like the relationship between the two isn't as unfamiliar as it seems. Brother Gagalol, perhaps being meticulous and cautious is your strong point. However, you are really thinking too much this time. I can feel the goodwill of the other party. Furthermore, I dare to use my life to guarantee that what he said is true. In reality, the two of them have long been sworn brothers and their territories have been frequenting each other. However, there aren't many who know about this secret. I don't know about that portrait of yours, but the portrait of the prophecy of our sacred land being destroyed is definitely true. Look at those gigantic stone statues, they have already been shattered into pieces. However, only a small number of the tribe leaders know that these stone statues hidden deep in the mountains are actually the defensive mechanism of the sacred mountain. Ordinary tribesmen don't even know that these stone statues were the work of our ancestors. Their shattering can only mean that they were forcefully destroyed by a strong enemy. This also means that the tribe is in the greatest danger. That isn't enough. Perhaps he obtained the information from a certain tribe leader. You are thinking too much. Look at that giant. It is a gigantic golden giant. At this moment, a gigantic spear is pierced through its chest and it is on the verge of death. However, the image on its chest is still shining brightly. This is a secret that absolutely no one knows about. The one on the image should be me. My ultimate talent, War God Incarnation. It allows me to sacrifice everything before returning to the embrace of the War God and transform into an invincible war giant. This is a legendary talent of the ancient barbarians. Even my father doesn't know about it, so it is impossible for him to know about it from other sources. This doesn't just mean that the end of the world is coming, but that the end of the world is coming very soon. You actually appeared in the prophecy? It seems that the end of the world is coming much faster than expected. Why don't we talk to that Lord Roland? Don't you suspect that he lied to you? Hearing this, the silver fox, who will become famous for his intelligence in the future, smiled bitterly. Just as that crazy witch said, "What kind of people are we, and what kind of person is that Lord? Is it worth it for him to lie to us personally? I was thinking too much. What we need to do now is to seize the opportunity to repair our relationship with him. I can feel that he is a little dissatisfied with us. Yes, tell your men to prepare a generous gift. We will personally visit him tomorrow." Chapter 141. Looking up from the Showen Valley, one could see the sun shining down from the clouds. The surrounding mountains were so tall that they pierced through the clouds. It was precisely these mountains that created this rare warm granary in the Northlands. Nature's uncanny workmanship created this land of natural miracles. The mountains and forests blocked out the cold winds and winds, while the rain and underground rivers brought rich nutrients to the land, creating this rare granary in the Northlands. The Northlands wasn't a land that produced food. In other places, one harvest per year was already the limit. But here, with the help of mags, it was possible to have 3 harvests per year. Not only that, due to the abundance of nutrients and a suitable climate, the quality of the crops here was also quite high. This was also the reason why we absolutely had to come here. The cultivation of new crops couldn't be separated from the actual planting process. 10 years of effort in other regions would only be enough to select 10 generations of improved crops. But here, it would be at least 30 generations. The difference between one generation of improved crops would be enormous, and the difference between 20 or so generations would be even greater. Can't you directly use magic to accelerate the ripening process? I really don't know how you managed to pass the life theory exam back in the day. Using magic to accelerate the ripening process and growing real crops are 2 completely different things. Magic infused with the will of the caster will directly distort the growth of the plant. If you want to see a normal life's growth process, you have to do it step by step. You still don't know how he passed the exam? It was all because of cheating. If it weren't for his amazing cheating skills, he would have long since failed most of his classes and directly been expelled from school with that wooden brain of his that was basically zero comprehension of the elements. After waking up from her long hibernation, Heloise entered a phase where she was overly energetic. She was currently badmouthing me while lying on my head and pulling on my hair to make a furball. Teacher Heloise, with your current appearance, could it be that your physical body's form will affect your soul? The silly cat suddenly paused upon being reminded of this. Only then did she realize that her behavior was no different from a real cat's. She immediately covered her face with her paws and was speechless. Phut, of course not. Her cat form is only one of her disguises. She's just addicted to pretending to be a cat. Silly cat, you actually dare to bite me. All right then, after I used reality to show her what it meant to cause trouble from the mouth, Heloise used her actions to show me what it meant to become angry from embarrassment. A pet cat dares to ambush its master. Are you rebelling? Damn cat, you haven't ruled the world yet. The silly cat and I immediately started fighting each other. Just as I was about to obtain victory by relying on my size, I heard Amelia's faint voice. Your relationship is really good. Who would be on good terms with him, huh? All right then, at the very least, we agreed on this point. In order to prove this point, and in order to make Heloise's explanation the truth, I grabbed the cat by its neck and spun it around 18 times in hell. As expected, I received a delightful screech, followed by a stunned dead cat. Compared to the past, the awakened silly cat's mimicry had become more realistic. From her appearance, she had evolved from a meow alien cub into an adult black cat. Her originally withered cat fur had become glossy and smooth. After successfully devouring the semigod equipment Dark God's Breath of Death, Heloise had finally begun to display her potential as a top-notch magic pet. While her appearance had become more luxurious and elegant, the silly cat had undergone an even more profound transformation in a more concealed location. Magic pet, Heloise, mother of greed, race, special slime, strength, 14, agility, 10, stamina, 35, intelligence, 30, will, 25, charm, undetermined. Job, LV 37 mage. Overall evaluation, position. Race ability, special transformation, legendary, splinter greed subbody, legendary, talent ability. Special transformation, legendary transforming into a harmless cat is her weakest ability. She can choose a weapon form to transform. Currently, there are 2 forms available for you to choose: staff, breath of death, magic sword, pseudo, pale justice. Talent ability, splinter greed subbody, legendary splinter a small greed subbody. This sub-body inherits a portion of Heloise's abilities and attributes. As long as it is within a certain range, this sub-body will be completely under Heloise's control, acting as her eyes and ears. Current number of splits, 15417. When one is unlucky, people tend to think that the black cat that brings misfortune is everywhere. However, for Heloise, it is not difficult to be everywhere. She will always turn into a crow-black cat form to mock your bad luck. System evaluation, this is your magic pet. However, she is constantly thinking about how to rebel within the limits of the contract. Don't be fooled by her appearance. As a master mage, even if she only has the strength of a bronze rank, she is still able to easily deal with those gold rank rookies. Furthermore, her extremely high basic attributes and shape-shifting ability allow her spells to be even more hidden and dangerous than before. System evaluation 2, she is far from being as weak and powerless as she appears to be. As for why she is hiding her strength, do you still need me to explain? Perhaps, she is very satisfied with your recent interactions, so she has decided to let you live after she succeeds in her rebellion. So, what are you waiting for? While you still have the upper hand, take care of this foolish meow alien. The quality of the Death Breath Scepter that is only in its epic form has obviously decreased. Furthermore, the power of death that has been devoured has caused Heloise to become dangerous and powerful. Looking at the stats of the various abilities on the interface, looking at the increasing number of greed subbodies, I am starting to suspect that if I were to fall out with her and have a serious one-on-one fight with her, the one who would emerge victorious in the end would most likely not be me. Putting aside the fact that she thinks that she has concealed her strength well, she has long exposed her true strength. I am also enjoying bullying the darned cat so blatantly. Despite having strength, she could only take out a notebook to record down her current situation in order to make me overlook her own fighting prowess. In terms of strength, Heloise's experience and knowledge are what we rely on the most at the moment. Furthermore, she was the one who helped us choose the first batch of crops. Of course, the more important reason is that Amelia and I lack common sense and limits in our research, so we need her to check and correct us. I have a good idea. Let's plant rice on a frog with moist skin, allowing animals and plants to coexist. I have even thought of a name for it. It's you. Wondrous frog seed. Rejected. Putting aside the technical difficulty, the frog would probably die in a few days. Also, how are those things going to reproduce? Then, let's plant it on a zombie. I heard that the rotting flesh of the dead is very nutritious to plants. Rejected. Who would dare to eat something like zombie rice? Then, if you dare to say zombie rice or zombie biscuits, I will smear your face with slime. Alright, I will go back and think about it. Should I say that as expected of an expert? I thought that Amelia would be the same as me, viewing it as an interesting project and trying out the latest technology. In the end, she is the one who deals with it by the book. Special Whoda barley, special Sierra rice. That's it. Yeah, the first batch of 27 types of mutated plants. We need to find the ones that are most compatible with the cold-resistant genes, as well as the ones that have the strongest adaptability to dry and frozen environments. After obtaining the most adaptable type, I will use magic to mutate it and choose the best mutation to enter into the second generation. Mutation isn't something that can be done in a day. Even with the greenhouse technology you provided, the most we can do is to speed up the replacement process. For the safety of ordinary people, we need to be careful. Why are you looking at me so strangely? Did I say something wrong? I hurriedly shake my head. You didn't say anything wrong, but it doesn't match your image. Use a grateful heart to thank Mother Earth for her blessings and treat her blessings cautiously. Back then, when I was a saintess in the Church of Earth God in Zidril, my teacher taught me this. What a pity. Saintess. Or is it the saintess of the Church of Earth Mother who has a surprisingly good reputation? I can't help but sigh at Amelia's colorful past. I am a little curious as to how she got to where she is today. A pity. A pity that she was deceived by a man. As a saintess of the church, she lost her chastity and was naturally expelled from the church. The worst part is that that man abandoned her and said to her, "I was just playing with you." Men are naturally interested in the identity of a saintess, but you aren't even a saintess now, so how can I give up my honor to fool around with you? Not long after that, my teacher committed suicide. She died such an unhonorable death and was treated as a stain on the Church of Earth God. Even I, as the successor saintess and adopted daughter, was unable to attend her funeral. It can be said that her reputation was completely ruined. Beneath those casual words is a bone-piercing hatred. Did you take revenge for her? I killed that man's entire family, but he managed to escape. Even now, I still can't do anything to him. Now? He's still alive. Dragon Hunter Demos. He's the first-generation Demos, his adopted son. I've already killed the second-generation Demos. One day, this isn't the first time I've heard of this name. Isn't this the same name Marcelit's enemy? Recalling the information I obtained from the old Ottoman emperor, I chuckle. I'll plant some grass of undying in his bones and cut off a piece of his flesh every day to feed him. Amelia's eyes are bloodshot as she says the torture she imagines in her mind. It's obvious that she's on the verge of losing control. However, I pat her on the shoulder. There'll be a day when you take revenge. I'll help you. I'll make his death even more unhonorable and despairing than your adopted mother's. Amelia pauses in surprise for a moment before taking 2 steps back to increase the distance between us. She stares at me with a vigilant gaze. Stop trying to get close to me. You won't be any better off. I've already investigated your past. Although you've never had a confirmed relationship with a woman, nor have you ever toyed with a woman before, the women you've provoked definitely owe you more emotional debts than that bastard. I gape. Where did this rumor come from? I've been single for 3 lifetimes already. If I really have emotional debts, why would I owe them? Wouldn't it be better to just pay off my debt and get rid of my single status? I didn't. H. Stop with your flowery words. You playboys are the best at hoping for women. Can you even remember how many women have cried for you? Right now, we're only in a cooperative relationship. Don't even think about obtaining my trust. Alright then, I don't even know what to say anymore as I watch Amelia turn around and leave. Playboy. An old bachelor is actually being treated as a playboy. Fut. I'm dying of laughter. This silly cat is actually rolling around in laughter, making me want to throw her out. Yep, the next moment, I did just that. The silly cat is rolling around in the air, but she's still shouting. I'm so dizzy. I hate this feeling. I'll be back. I hate cat aliens who know how to speak human language. I turn around and see a bunch of fawning faces. Lord, can we rest now? It's almost noon. No, continue working for me. This is your punishment. Of course, since it's an agricultural experiment, there are naturally hardworking farmers. At this moment, the farmers who are covered in mud and have been busy for an entire morning are a bunch of bosses from the various departments. Eaglestorm, I'm grateful for your support, but you can't do this even if you can't recruit students. Hearing that, the legendary Druil's face turns red. Yesterday, after they couldn't recruit students no matter how hard they tried, under a certain person's creativity, they started to transform into bears, wolves, and other animals to play with the youngsters, carrying them around to increase their favorability. But as they ran, under an indescribable primal drive, the famous specialty of Sulphur Mountain City once again appeared on the surface. Mom, what is that? Little bird. Little bird, your sister. It's obviously a small elephant. Ah. Hurry up and leave, don't look. Shueti, yesterday I heard that there are already people calling the law the Church of Naked Running. That, boss, leave it to me. I will show you the innate farming skills of us Tauren. Our racial specialty is herbology +5. Although I can't understand why the Tauren would need such a racial talent, but perhaps it exists for today. Oh, I'm burning up, I want to work hard. After becoming a beef jerky, this fellow finally restrained himself for 2 days. But this time, he is burning up at a new place and seeing this familiar wave of stripping, how can he restrain himself? As for Grimm and the bunch of goblins, when they started to demonstrate their mechanical assembly skills, I should have been lazy with them. Those holes in the mines still have to be filled up. As for Beifong. Right, what did Beifong do? Why is he being punished here? Beifong, what did you do that day? My lord, I've been wronged. This is like flying snow in June. I was just chatting with someone, but everyone inexplicably brought me in. Ah, Beifong, you actually didn't do anything wrong? I'm sorry, I'm used to bringing you in as soon as I saw you. Then, I will deduct your punishment next time. Diana's apology isn't sincere at all, but the decision to deduct his punishment this time was unanimously approved by everyone. Obviously, no one thinks that Beifong wouldn't commit a mistake again. Impossible, Beifong actually didn't do anything wrong. Nonsense, it must be a smokescreen. How can he not do anything? Sigh. The world slandered me, bullied me, humiliated me, laughed at me, belittled me, despised me, hated me and lied to me, so what? Just bear with it, let it be, avoid it, bear with it, respect it and ignore it. Just wait a few more years and see how it goes. In the end, facing the criticism of the crowd, the innocent Draken sighs. Leaving behind a sentence that makes people want to beat him up, he goes to accompany Shueti who is working hard. Chapter 142. Hard labor, odd jobs, construction projects, dangerous mining operations, there's nothing they can't do. What's more useful and trustworthy than undead laborers who never get tired? They work year-round, but they don't need any supplies. 10 gold coins for one, and it only costs 2 gold coins to replenish their death energy every year. Buying once will benefit you for the rest of your life. Don't listen to that guy's bragging. Undead tend to stink. It's fine in winter, but won't they stink to death in spring or summer? Mister, come take a look at my mummy maid. She's filled with expensive spices, and not only will she never rot, she'll even smile when you hug her to sleep at night. You should know that only people of high status can become mummies. My little cutie here was a noble princess when she was still alive. Don't listen to his bragging. Someone like him dares to dig up a royal tomb? If he's going to find a princess for you, it'll probably be a village girl with big legs. A gnome princess is still a princess, right? She's the princess of a large tribe with more than 300 members. Even though the two undead mags' verbal battle soon escalated into a physical battle, the customer still didn't care about their business. Instead, he chose to work with skeleton laborers not far away. The reason was that skeleton laborers were cheap and clean. After the power of death dissipated, they could even be used as clothes hangers to feed dogs. Undead army horses for sale. Never tired, forever loyal. Before you ride a skeleton horse that falls apart easily, think about your own weight. I have a gigantic bone beast that can be pulled by humans. You're welcome to purchase. This was Definder's 7th market, which was also the newly established undead labor market. Here, undead mags finally found a way to make a living apart from killing. When news of the Sinless City spread throughout the entire continent, the happiest group was probably the undead mags who practiced undead magic. In this cruel world, the weak would never have a good life. Chasing after power had become a natural instinct for most people. Even if that power was unspeakable, it would allow them to live a better life. At the very least, they wouldn't die mysteriously in battle. No matter how one looked at it, it was worth the risk. As long as one progressed step by step, not every single existence that practiced fallen magic would become insane. However, the Holy Church wouldn't even consider whether or not the undead, whose existence is a sin, had actually done anything wrong. The Holy Church stubbornly focused on purifying every single undead they encountered. Mags who were capable of creating undead were the number one heretics and villains. Some people were simply suited to practicing necromancy magic, while others had coincidentally obtained the inheritance of necromancy magic. However, after unintentionally exposing themselves, they were treated as villains and heretics and were wanted. This kind of encounter made all necromancers try their best to hide their existence. If they were accidentally exposed, they would not hesitate to kill them to silence them. This also caused the nightmares of necromancers to worsen from another aspect. In the eyes of the world, necromancers can't possibly be the cheerful young man next door with a face full of pimples. Necromancers must have a gloomy expression and a fierce glint in their eyes as they carry out their plans to destroy the world in the evil and crazy Shiluor Empire. But in reality, this is a misunderstanding. Shiluor is the country of the undead. The upper-class nobles and domain lords are all undead. No matter how strange necromancers appear in the eyes of the world, they are still living people. And from a certain standpoint, living people are equivalent to slaves in Shiluor. As a living person, The status of a necromancer is extremely awkward. Unless they are willing to give up their physical body and become a Lich, or if they are talented enough to be favored by a Lich, they will most likely not have a good life. At the very least, they won't be able to enjoy the treatment they deserve in terms of food, housing, and other living conditions. And if a bloodthirsty blood tribe takes a liking to the taste of blood, or a warlike death knight becomes a sword target, or a Lich teacher becomes a new experimental subject. In reality, as long as they don't reveal their magic, most necromancers are indeed able to successfully blend in with the crowd. Not only that, they can even secretly use their own strength to obtain a better living condition for themselves. All along, necromancers and demon warlocks have been the most popular mercenaries among the nobles. After all, they are the typical type of mercenaries who die when exposed to the light. Not only are they fast and ruthless in their actions, even if their secrets were to be accidentally leaked, most of them won't be able to get out. As such, the reputation of necromancers naturally gets worse and worse. And if necromancers want to improve, they have to deal with corpses. If they can't kill the corpses themselves, they can only rob graves. This has created countless urban legends and ghost stories. That's why the graveyards of every city are under the supervision of the Holy Church's night watchmen. It is normal for necromancers to accidentally leave some traces when robbing corpses. Even if a necromancer is lucky enough to reach silver rank or gold rank and is able to rely on his own strength to become a mercenary and earn a lot of money, but as long as he is not careful, he will still be exposed. Perhaps, a beggar by the roadside will turn around and report you for the reward of 10 silver coins. But once you are exposed, no matter how well you try to cover it up, the Holy Church's encirclement will immediately return. Even if you are lucky enough to escape, under the omnipresent bounty, fleeing for your life becomes the only option. And the lucky ones who are able to escape to a remote village or the Shiluor Empire are definitely less than 1 in 10. And when Wu Mianxi's announcement resounds throughout the entire world, the necromancers hidden in the crowd are all stunned. But after that, they are unable to contain their joy. Undead don't represent evil. Perhaps I can live on openly and honorably. Perhaps I can even be worshipped and respected because of this. That's why, half a month after that announcement, necromancers in disguise would enter the city every day and then mysteriously vanish. There were even more who sneaked into the city and crossed the city walls. During those days, there would always be people flying over the city walls in the middle of the night. They were either blood tribe or gargoyles. Most of the time, there would be people hanging below them. Not only was it hard to guard against them, it also made the archers on the city walls very hesitant. Are they really going to shoot them down? But it's obvious that something isn't right. Soon, the guards roughly understand what's going on. But what's the meaning of going over the city walls instead of the city gates? And in the end, those who land on the ground will always be blocked by the knights. Are you a necromancer? No, I'm just an extreme sports enthusiast. That day, I happened to see a gargoyle passing by. I wanted to try the feeling of floating in the air, so I grabbed onto its leg. Even an idiot wouldn't believe such a lame lie, but there are people who never get tired of saying it. The night squad in charge of Defender's city defense finally got tired of these loach-like necromancers and decided to stick a sign outside all the city gates. City West Gate number 7 is a path exclusively used by necromancers. You can enter directly and go through all the necessary identification and procedures. It only takes half an hour, and you can even get a job recommendation 3 times. Necromancers who enter through other routes will be fined 300 gold coins and their work visa will be revoked for 2 months if they are discovered. Note, gargoyles and other middle-sized and above necromancers, please stop outside the city or pay a fee to store them in the storage area of gate number 7. Of course, you have the freedom to not follow the above rules. However, Defender's skies are guarded by the Bone Dragon Knight Lord Tymir. You can try to play a game of cat and mouse with him. But if he and his mount go overboard, your remains might become a hot item to be auctioned off by your comrades tomorrow. Right now, a skeleton mage or a Lich can be sold for an astronomical price in the city. From a certain perspective, this is already a form of sincerity. At the very least, they didn't shout about killing us, expressing their goodwill towards necromancers. After someone took the lead and confirmed that it was safe, Even my undead knight was shocked by the number of necromancers. When they entered the city and were delighted to find so many comrades, they met with a new problem. They, who had just started their new life, lost their jobs. The newly established Defender Medical College, Spectre College, does require quite a number of teachers and staff. But it is a pity that it is a matter for top-notch talents. Most of the necromancers had to figure things out on their own. Their standard is only slightly better than that of an apprentice. Not to mention teaching others, they even want to find a teacher to teach them. Old profession? Assassins or mercenaries? There are quite a number of fugitives among the necromancers. Naturally, they thought of the way they made a living in the past. I have to admit that there is no limit to the stupidity of humans. In the miracle of the God of Law, the sinless city, he still dared to commit a serious crime. When his corpse was hung on the flagpole to dry, it could be considered as an example to others. At the same time, it also explained what the judgment spell and the sinless city were. Of course, an excessively high unemployment rate will naturally lead to social instability. Thus, I have long made plans for it. The first is to join the army. After all, necromancers are definitely a huge killing machine on the battlefield. This is also what they are most proficient in. My army has many years of experience in using necromancers. But for those lesser necromancers who don't wish to enter the battlefield, there is a brand new topic for them to research. Making various kinds of magic into daily life. Making equipment and tools for necromancy. This topic may seem inconceivable, but in reality, it isn't a new topic. Many human kingdoms have long used magic lamps. Fire-type magic furnaces for boiling water is also a daily consumption for the nobles. All kinds of alchemy tools are the crystallization of the magic civilization. Since other magic and alchemy can do it, why can't necromancy magic? In reality, necromancy magic is very versatile. It is just that the materials used are a little unique. Undead workers are the servants of the necromancers. It is normal for them to become a labor market. Of course, there are some technical difficulties involved. Low-tier undead are brainless and bloodthirsty by nature. Unless a necromancer keeps an eye on them, no one can guarantee that these brainless undead won't go out of control. However, a small invention has changed everything. Lazy sword seal, death is the sweetest sleep. Unfortunately, it isn't time for you to get off work yet. So, make the most of your time and try your best to live an exciting life. The lazy sword seal is a sword seal that represents necromancy magic. Its usage is actually no different from other elemental sword seals. The sword seal is activated through Olivia's magic box, and the sword seal is used to control the power of death. However, looking at the current progress of research, at most, it allows the user to control a few low-tier undead. The information I left behind was further opened up by Marguerite and the others. Very quickly, a simple Olivia's magic box for undead was created. Its only use is to contract and control fixed low-tier undead. Thus, when an ordinary person holds this black magic bullet in their hands, they can also control low-tier undead to serve them. Thus, the undead labor market became a reality. Skeleton laborers, zombie miners, mummy maids, and the like. As long as you can think of it, there is nothing you can't find. Of course, one should know when to stop doing business. The genius who came up with the disgusting and cute abomination Stitch Monster Sexy Maid costume has already had his work permit revoked for 3 months due to too many complaints about the product. Ghost Carriage Rental, Gargoyle Express, Zombies vs. Plants series have all become hot topics in the city. It is foreseeable that with the improvement of technology, a brand new magic civilization might be born in the border regions. Perhaps these series of small things might not seem like much, but in reality, it has a far-reaching impact. The unknown represents fear. When these demons and ghosts can be enslaved by oneself, the fear and estrangement would naturally be greatly reduced. When one's principles can be accepted by the world, necromancers would also start to experience a normal life. Sometimes, the times take a huge leap in places that you can't see. I reckon that even the inventor, His Highness Roland, wouldn't have thought that this most obscure and inconspicuous invention would be the first to influence and change the world. However, there are some things that don't change, such as the unpredictable human heart and the seeds of hatred. Renee looks at the headless corpses in front of her and sighs. The two corpses are very young. One is a silver rank half-elf archer and the other is a rookie necromancer who sneaked in. When I came to inspect the city walls, they, who were disguised as passers-by, suddenly ambushed me. However, in the instant that they made their move, they were beheaded by my own guards. Master Fade, Teacher Ferdinand, Archmage Heine, thank you for your protection. Everyone has worked hard. There is no need to thank us. This is an order from His Highness Roland. Before I left, I had 2 sword saints and an archmage stay by Rain's side to protect her. At that time, Rain had thought that I was overreacting, but reality proved that I was right. This was the 7th assassination attempt in half a month. It was obvious that this was only the beginning. The younger the seedling, the easier it is for it to die early. Even without your identity as a descendant of the mist, just as the link between me and the Donglan Principality, you are the most important and irreplaceable link in the entire country. If anything happens to you, there is no point in talking about anything else. If I were your enemy, assassinating you would definitely be a profitable business. We don't have any enemies in the northern lands, do we? At that time, I only smiled and didn't say anything. At this moment, Renee recalled how she didn't think much of it and could only sigh at her immaturity and naivety. Send them to the 7th market. Send me a copy of the results of the soul interrogation, even though they are most likely sent by that country. Seriously, the beast men will be invading next year. Rather than sending people to assassinate me, they might as well prepare for war. No enemies. They are all enemies. On the level of countries, as long as there is a conflict of interest, it is impossible to have a good relationship. No one would want to see a strong neighboring country. Even if that country repeatedly says that they won't invade other countries, how can other countries entrust their safety to others? Not to mention, some countries have their own ambitions. The gradually recovering Donglan is an eyesore. At this moment, I, who was still in Chiral, met with a similar experience. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 top-notch assassins and a saint-rank thief hiding in the shadows. They really think highly of me. Amelia waved her staff, her face filled with anger. It's these assassins again. This is the 13th time this week. I have basically become your free fighter. Give me more money. H, I don't have money, I don't have my life either. Winter always came early in the highlands. By the time most of the countries in the northern lands were preparing for the beastmen's invasion next spring, the plains were already covered in ice and snow. However, just like in the past, this time, the orcs did not shrink their area of activity and prepare for the winter. On the contrary, various wolf knights and thunder rock knights roamed the highlands and killed the human spies hidden among them. The closer they got to the beastmen's territory, the stronger the patrols. Such abnormal behavior naturally attracted the attention of the countries. But after paying a huge price, even if they successfully entered the beastmen's territory and sent back information, it was only conventional intelligence about war preparations. But in reality, this was just a smokescreen. There were only 2 ways to enter the highlands where the beastmen lived. Both of them were blocked by the fortresses of the 2 countries. The Erluo Highlands was far away from the beastmen's territory and the entrance to the countries in the northern lands. It was a barren wasteland. But at this moment, there were already countless tents set up. The smoke that rose continuously showed that the beastmen army was gathering. At the highest peak, the tribe leaders were having a gathering. A piece of exciting news was spreading among the beastmen. Cheers to the honor of the war god. Next week, the beastmen army will invade the south. Finally, we can get our revenge. This time, we will catch the humans off guard. Activate the Thunderbird plan.